Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Municipality of Monroeville's Citizens Night for March 8th, 2018. If we would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I open up to Citizens Night, just a couple comments about the agenda. The Gateway School District rezoning request that is tabled from last month, they have requested that we leave it on the table. So we will not be taking action on it on Tuesday, other than to leave it on the table as per the school district's request. We are still in talks with the school district, and they're not ready for us to act on that quite yet. So certainly this is Citizens Night. You will have an opportunity to speak about it if you wish, but just so everyone knows, we will not be voting on that on Tuesday. Also, on the agenda under old business, the ordinance, amending ordinance number 1443 for the purpose of regulating and establishing standards and specific criteria for oil and gas development, drilling and related operations, and repealing ordinance numbers 2430 and 2437. This is certainly our oil and gas regulation ordinance that we've been talking about at length for over the past several months. It is my understanding from council that this will not be on the agenda on Tuesday, that actually we will be withdrawing this ordinance from the council. As per citizens' input, there was also, from some of our organizations, Sustainable Monroeville, they made suggestions as far as leaving our current ordinance as is, which is leaving drilling, that permitted use activity in the M2 industrial zone, and leaving that with our current standards. And then to wait till perhaps there are other state laws that are coming down the pike, that maybe we can adjust our ordinance at that point. So, once again, people are free to speak about that if they wish, but just to let everyone know that we won't be taking action on that on Tuesday. And now, Mr. Ratcher, as far as directing the manager to withdraw that ordinance, would we do that now if council is all in favor of that, or do we do it later in the meeting?
Well, I don't think that there's any problem as to when you do it in the meeting, but this would be the meeting setting of the agenda, obviously. If that's council's desire to remove it from the agenda, council could direct the manager to do it at that time.
So can I make a motion to remove the gas and oil ordinance now?
Well, would it be in a state?
I don't think it's a motion. I think it's just a consensus of you, the majority of you, that you want it to be removed from the agenda.
Okay, because I want it removed.
So would that require a roll call vote, correct?
Yes.
No, I don't believe it is. I think it's just a consent among you right now, and certainly if you take a vote on it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. Well, I want to take it off of the agenda.
Well, we vote on it. We have to do it Tuesday, right?
I'd suggest we vote on it.
I don't have a problem. I'll second
I'll vote.
it.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
It's a
Non-voting meeting.
It's
Yeah,
a
that's why it's a consensus, but it's not going to hurt if you all want to make your feelings known about it, and then Tuesday is when you officially act.
Then we'll officially act on
Yeah,
Tuesday,
right.
just so that everyone knows that I want to have it taken off the agenda and go back to the way it was and leave it alone for now. I don't think that enough questions have been answered. I think there's too many things that are unknown at this time, and being as it affects my ward more than anybody's, I personally am making the suggestion that we take it completely off the agenda and we go back to the industrial, like where it was before.
And I'm good with it.
I believe we're all in agreement.
I don't know that it affects your ward more than mine or whatever, but I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
And Mr. Wilson.
Well, it does if it changes. That's Stevie. That's why.
Okay.
I concur with it as well.
Okay.
And
Just
then
so
Mr.
everyone knows.
Very good, thank you, Mrs. Gatos. And then
Thank you.
Mr. Poach, Mr. Harvey, you're fine with that as well?
I am.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I? If there's something else you need to say, I have some comments I need to make.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah, I just want to point out to the audience that, yes, those two items will not be taking action. Once again, certainly you can speak about those if you wish, but just to be clear that we won't be voting on Tuesday. Mr. Arcinko.
Obviously, if you've watched the February 28th meeting of the Gateway School District, you heard that one of the school board members, Mary Beth Cerrucci, made some comments that I think that need to be addressed here and clarified. First off, she called this council dictators and kings, which is just plainly rude and unprofessional to say the least. She also stated that we break ordinances, laws, and I would like to know exactly what she meant by that. Her statement stating that this council disagrees or overrides, if you will, our planning commission or our zoning board commission is just not true. If you think about our planning commission, this council probably, and it's a recommending body, okay? They just recommend to this council for our final decision, because this is always the ones that makes the final decision on any ordinance or any land use or any of that issue. We probably have gone along with about 75 to 80% of their decisions. Why some of the decisions that we overturn or don't agree with? Because we get more information that they may not have. Concerning the zoning hearing board, in my tenure, and unless I'm wrong, I checked with Mr. Little over the last, I've been on, this is my 11th year, but in the last 8 to 10 years, we have not overturned not one of their decisions, and we can't really overturn it. We have to take their decision to the next higher court. Maybe Mrs. Cerrucci doesn't realize that the zoning hearing board is a judicial body. We cannot, this council has no authority over them whatsoever. If we don't agree with their decision, we have to take it downtown. On the logging issue she brought up, if you all recall, we had about 350 signatures from residents in the area who were very concerned about it. This council at that time, when it initially first came out, it had to do with, we thought there were land slide issues on that property. Then we found out after you go into it deeper, we found out that was not true. We certainly heard from the state, and they certainly ordered this council to proceed on and update our ordinance at that time, because it was outdated. At that time, when it first initially came up to this council, nobody knew that. We were responding to the residents, which we try to do, and responding to if there's a landslide issue there. We didn't, obviously, I don't want to be involved in that. Nobody up here, and I don't think any of you would want us to. Concerning the medical marijuana, she stated that we just opened up a basic marijuana shop. Well, obviously, it's not a marijuana shop. It's a medical marijuana. Maybe Mrs. Cerrucci doesn't care about PTSD veterans that could help. Or maybe that for the kids that have hundreds of seizures a day that helps. And I have a friend of mine that had a child that was happening, and the medical marijuana helped that child. In the last several years, she's had less than 10 versus a couple hundred a day. So obviously, she either don't care or doesn't understand medical marijuana. That's something for her to decide. On the temple issue, once again, we heard from the residents, and they were concerned, again, with that hillside. If you remember, that hillside's very high. We thought there was going to be landslide issues there as well. That was 3 years ago. Even though, yeah, we had to go to court, they won, you're right. But here it is 3 years later, not one bit of construction is being done on the site. So I guess what I'm saying is that, and I'll say this to Mrs. Cerrucci, like I'll say to any elected official here or any elected official with the Gateway School Board, if you're going to put out information, at least try to do it correctly. This council and the past councils, I don't believe, is trying to do anything to harm you as residents or this municipality. Nobody's perfect up here, but I assure you, we're here for you, the residents. As you can well see, with the gas and oil, we heard you. We got it. We're getting it. We're going to do whatever we need to do for you, our residents. Maybe the school district doesn't, maybe Mrs. Cerrucci doesn't feel that way, but we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What meeting was that presented? It was
February 28th school board meeting, and you can get it online. You can go on YouTube and just go right to the very end where her comments are.
It's right under her report.
This is the
Under her
first I'm
report.
being made aware of any of these comments.
Well,
So-
they're there. Go to the February 28th meeting.
It's under her report.
Okay, folks,
But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
you're welcome. So we're going to move over to our Citizens Night meeting. We're going to ask the citizens take 5 minutes, 5-minute comment period. This is not to censor anyone, but it's, in 5 minutes should be ample amount of time for people to get their point across. And but we'll leave the floor open at this point. Anyone that has signed in,
I've signed in, Mr. Mayor, and thank you.
welcome.
First of all, I'd like to
You can state your name for the record.
Jay Wright from Monroeville.
Thanks, Jay.
Most of you know me. I disagree with you sometimes. I agree with you sometimes. Tonight, I would like to thank all of you very much for canceling the ordinance. I really do. I think it helps people of Monroeville, and I think it's a good thing. I would like to say one last thing. Please consider passing an ordinance that there are no drilling on any borough property, ever, for the future. You could pass an ordinance like that. I would please ask you to do that. Whether you do or not, I'll ask. But once again, thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Nicole Henline. I'm the director of the library and a resident of Monroeville. And I just like to take a few minutes each month to let you know what's going on at the library and how we are trying to serve our community as you do every day. And thank you for your continued support. Our head of Children's Services and Technology just returned from a training that was part of the NASA at My Library grant, and she learned about lunar rocks and brought back samples. She received a kit from the program that includes a lot of exciting materials, a thermal camera, a digital microscope, a magnetic science kit. Make sure to watch for upcoming programs that are part of that NASA at My Library program. Our children's department is teaming with the school district to create a kindergarten registration event. Not only will there be fun events for the kids, we'll have information for the parents, kindergarten teachers from the district, building principals to answer questions, and a place set up where parents can receive assistance in registering their child for kindergarten in the fall. That's happening on Thursday, March 15th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. So that should be a fun event for everybody and hopefully will help a lot of people with questions they might have. Thank you to everyone who joined us last month for the Lunar New Year celebration. We had over 100 attendees. And this month we invite everyone to join us again on March 24th at 1 o'clock to learn about the colorful and fun celebration of Holly. And be prepared to get messy, is what my programming librarians have told me to warn people. We have, I'm going to try to shorten a few of these. In our adult, we have a ton of programs, so these are just a few. Please make sure that you and you encourage your constituents also to check out the website, the newsletter that can be picked up in the library or here at the municipal building, and our Facebook page. We're part of the One College, One Community Reads with Community College of Allegheny County. This year's title is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and we have a few programs based on that. One is coming up on March 14th when we're going to welcome Jonathan Javon White, who's an instructor of history at Penn State Greater Allegheny, and he's going to do a presentation on medical ethics and race in U.S. history. It's a really interesting topic, so I encourage anyone who likes to learn about history to definitely join us for that. On March 28th, there is a professor emeritus from the physics department at Carnegie Mellon University coming to talk about anti-gerrymandering, and he's talking about the math and science of gerrymandering and how they're developing new methods of drawing legislative districts in ways that are more nearly fair to all political parties. So please join us for his talk and a discussion on how his theories with science or his practices with science and math are hoping to make it a more fair and transparent process. And the Diamante Trio is on Thursday, March 29th at 7 o'clock. If you enjoy music, they are a wonderful trio. A violin, clarinet, and cello. They perform music from Latin America and Spain. And their repertoire goes from classical to jazz to tango to samba. So please do join us for that. A few things not to forget. The library offers Wi-Fi hotspots now that you can borrow. You can take the internet with you on vacation, business trips, or wherever you need it to be. You can download ebooks, audiobooks, movies, TV shows, music, magazines, all to your own devices from anywhere. And if you're not sure how to do that or you're not comfortable doing that yourself, we have classes at the library, and we also can set up one-on-one or one-on-two tutoring sessions with our librarians. And they can walk you through it the first time or the first few times. We do not mind repeat customers. In fact, we love them. So even if you're not quite sure the ebooks are for you, if you want to try them out, stop in and we can help you with that. A couple dates that we would love the public in general to save. The Friends of the Monroeville Public Library are holding a royal wedding tea on May 19th from 10 to 1 in the program room. They are going to be watching the royal wedding coverage on the big screen. They're going to have a lovely brunch, door prizes and activities, and the tickets are $20 and benefit the Friends of the Library. And we would like to ask Council and Mr. Mayor and Mr. Little to set aside Tuesday, April 3rd at 3:30 if possible. We are going to be doing a ribbon cutting with the Chamber of Commerce on Yolanda's room, which is the official grand opening. We finally have all of the pictures hung and everything like that. Public Works did a lot of work last year to redo the carpet and paint, and Yolanda was a longtime volunteer of the library who left us money that allowed us to put up the wall, the glass wall that's there that created another room for programming. So please do join us to celebrate this longtime library volunteer and dedicate the room we were able to create thanks to her generosity.
What time? I'm sorry.
It's 3:30 March 3rd.
April 3rd?
April 3rd.
Yes. Thank you.
3:30,
April 3rd.
Okay.
3:30.
Thank you.
March
Sorry
3rd,
about
we missed it.
No, I missed it too then if it was in March. No, April 3rd, thank you, at 3:30. And last but not least, the second week of April is National Library Week. Visit the library all week long for activities, refreshments, and chances at prizes. And I want to share with you a small bit of good news that I received just yesterday, so it's hot off the presses. It hasn't even reached the presses. We received a $10,000 educational access grant from the Department of Education that will allow us to create and offer a series of coding programs for our community's children. We're able to take these programs on the road, especially to reach kids who might not have transportation or opportunity to get to the library. And a great thank you to Senator Brewster and his office, who brought the grant to our attention and helped us navigate the process and obtain the grant.
Yay.
So we just found out yesterday, so we're very excited.
Yay, very good, very good,
So,
very good.
Thank you so much for your time and for your support of the library and your service to the community.
Again, thank
Thanks,
you,
Nicole.
Nicole. Great job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nicole.
David Mintz, please.
I've already signed in. My name is David Mintz. Good evening, everyone. Everybody knows me. And I appreciate at the beginning of the meeting that you said that obviously you want to learn more about the issue that we've been talking about for so long, and it's not going to be on the agenda for the Tuesday meeting. When, of course, I'm speaking about the oil and gas ordinance. But I'd still like to, as part of that further education, actually say a few things. A lot of that is for the people here and for people at home, just to maybe get them up to speed, as well as some questions I have for you. First of all, a quick timeline to make sure people understand that Monroeville zoning ordinance 1443 was adopted along with our official zoning map on December 11th, 1984. So it's been in effect for over 33 years at least that version as amended. And that's important to know. As we move along in time, I'll just mention a few things that happened. So this was 1984. On October 14th of 2008, an amendment 2430 that we should all be familiar with basically added oil and gas wells to the conditional or to the use table 201 as a conditional use. This is in 2008, October 14th. And then less than 2 months later, December 9th of 08, there was ordinance number 2437 amending ordinance 2430 with some details. But still, this is all about adding oil and gas operations as a conditional use to the use table of Monroeville. This happened in 2008. Fast forward all the way to October 10th of 2017, and in a unanimous vote, we had ordinance 2669 amending the use table once again so that we removed oil and gas wells as a conditional use from every zone except for M2 industrial. And that's where we are today. That's if we take no further action, that's where we are today. I'd like to mention that under Mr. Ratcher's advisement, I spoke to the Planning Commission on February 21st, saying to them some of the things that I'd spoken about here, hoping that they had actually gotten the recommendation of Sustainable Monroeville. They informed me they had not. And Mr. Pacusa actually mentioned that Lois Drumheller had requested that they receive those recommendations, but they had not. So I just want to make sure the council knows they did not receive those recommendations as of February 21st. I don't know since then. So I just want to make sure you understood that. Mr. Pacusa, during our discussion, also, as I was talking about fracking in Monroeville, he stated to me that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania directs that fracking be allowed in municipalities in some zone, and that this idea of the exclusionary that we've been talking about a lot, that the setbacks that would be required, whatever they turn out to be, may make that an exclusionary issue if we just keep it in M2. And this is what we've been going back and forth talking about, and I think we all understand that. Mr. Hugas, who was at the meeting, also spoke up at that point and said that not just fracking, he said, but everything. And then he clarified that and qualified it as every legitimate industry must be allowed in some zone. Remember, we talked about that. The idea, though, that it's exclusionary to put an industrial use like fracking in an industrial zone, and I've repeated this before, but I want to make it clear that because it's been over 33 years since the zoning map was created in Ordinance 1443, I, not being a lawyer, still find it difficult to believe that we would. I think some of the problem is that we're worried about going to court, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and losing if we keep it in M2 industrial because it would be considered exclusionary possibly because of setbacks, because of the shape and size of the M2 industrial zone. But those zones, as I understand from my research, were created over 33 years ago. I don't think anybody can accuse us of intentionally being exclusionary by something that was created before the idea of modern industrial fracking came to be. And if that's an argument that I've been making all along, and now that I know how long ago that was, I think that's an important issue. In addition to that, if you look at actually page 2 of our Ordinance 1443, there is, I'm sorry, this is actually the one on December 11th, 1984, Ordinance 1443. There's actually, under Article 2, District Regulations, number 205, there's actually something defined as prohibited uses. And as far as I know, unless somebody can correct me, this hasn't been amended out. This is what I can find. It says prohibited uses as defined. It says uses not specifically listed in the usage table, of course, or conditional uses shall be prohibited. And by conditional uses, I assume that means uses that don't meet our conditions, right? That's what that would mean, of course. Okay, so the idea that I've been given maybe sometimes during the council meetings as well as the planning commission meetings that we can't prohibit anything may be true. I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true, but at least in our ordinance of December 11th, 1984, we have a definition that says prohibited uses. And the prohibited uses would be something, and I want to give an example. Let's say what I started to say before, on page 2 of the proposed update to our oil and gas ordinance, we have a definition of something called a disposal well. As we well know, Plum has been fighting this and maybe losing. A disposal well is a non-producing gas well used for the storage of wastewater and other fluids. This is in the proposed ordinance that we're talking about not having on the agenda at the next meeting. This is also known as an injection well, if you're not familiar with that. This disposal well, also known as an injection well, is in the definitions at the beginning here, in the glossary, whatever you may want to speak to it, but it is not included in our usage table 201, anywhere that I can find. So, under the ordinance of 1443 of 1984, if somebody came into Monroeville and said, I'd like to put in a disposal well, also known as an injection well, as our ordinance is right now, well, that would be a prohibited use because it's not in there. Now, does everybody understand that? It would be a prohibited use. It's not in our table, and that's everything I can find that would make it a prohibited use. It's not in the table. Now, somebody could say, well, that's old, that's outdated. I was anticipating somebody might say that. What I've been advised, and if we would take that prohibited use definition 205, and I can give this to you, if that needs to be revised, what I've been advised about by the former president of the Pittsburgh City Council is that it's a very common practice for municipalities to have basically a statement at the end of their usage table that says for any usage that is brought to the municipality that's not in the usage table, that the municipality would try to find a zone that is appropriate for that usage. And if there is no zone that seems to be appropriate for that usage, then it would be relegated by default to the industrial zone. So I had a lot to say, and I hope you understand that I actually have several different arguments here. As it is written right now, I would say we have the right to make something prohibited. Now, if that's outdated and it's still an ordinance and needs to be taken out, then at least we maybe should have the sentence in our usage table that says, if there is no zone that we can find appropriate, or first of all, that we should find an appropriate zone. And fracking is an industrial process, and it should be in an industrial zone. And if there's no zone that we can find other than our industrial zone, that's where it should be. Just like anything like a disposal well that would come in, if there's no zone and it's not in our table, then it gets relegated to the industrial zone. So I actually have several different arguments here based on what you may have answered to me as to what's out of date, even though it's still in our 1443. If you understood what I was saying.
I think I follow you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Kind of losing me. I'm not arguing with
you know what? I could have actually done without the 5 minutes. I probably would have been able to explain it a little bit better.
Well,
but-
maybe if we could
Yeah.
either, if Mr. Little's following you,
I am,
Okay.
and if you could talk to Mr. Ratcher and figure out if there's anything else we can add, or are we fine?
Well, the one thing, first of all, Dave,
Sure.
if a developer comes in and you do not explicitly have a use in your ordinance,
Right.
they can file what's called a curative amendment. All right? And you have to have a public hearing. They're rare, but they exist. So if I was a developer and I really wanted to put an injection well in Monroeville, which I don't think is going to happen, but who knows what
Who
the
knows? It's
future
happening in
holds.
Plum, right? Yeah.
And it's not listed there, even if you had it as a prohibited use, I think what they would do is file what's called a curative amendment saying, hey,
Let it be known.
you should be providing this use in your community, and you are not.
Right.
Now, just because it's not listed in the ordinance, theoretically, like Mr. Hugo said at the Planning Commission meeting, every use that's known to man, or known to man and woman,
Right.
should be included. You can't exclude anybody from a use, theoretically speaking.
And I thought you might. Okay, sure. And I thought you might.
So the
answer-
curative amendment would be
Sure.
the route, could be a route to go.
Yeah, I thought you might answer that, and that's why I was thinking maybe this number 205 in our ordinance 1443 is outdated or illegal, but it specifically says there are prohibited uses. So maybe that should be taken out if that's not accurate.
I worry about changing anything,
Yeah.
because sometimes when you do that, you open yourself up to
Okay.
If you changed it, why didn't you fix it to
Sure.
the current
Okay.
today's
Open that
standards?
can of worms.
Yes,
Okay,
so
okay.
leave it alone.
Oh, all right.
And-
I certainly wasn't suggesting that we take it out.
That
but
was-
my-
that would be my
personally
worry.
think we've beat this up pretty well.
Yeah,
Yes.
my point was, it seems like that we were saying there were prohibited uses. You're saying that we would probably lose in court. I thought somebody up here would say that,
Well,
essentially.
well, as far not the curative amendment.
Right.
I never said we'd lose in a court of law, but what you're talking about, and I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
Dave, in that, hey, This was, the zoning ordinance was developed in 1984,
Yes.
and technology has changed.
Right.
But that's up for a judge to decide, if it would go to court. That would be for a judge to decide, the way I see it. I mean, if it would get to that point. Whether or not saying that our ordinance, technology has moved ahead. And, what you're putting in here, you would get a lawsuit over it because you're not providing it, you have to provide it, or you're being de facto exclusionary due to setbacks or whatever the case might be in the M2.
Well, there's two, okay. Essentially, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that our M2 industrial zoning map, the industrial zone in the zoning map was created over 33 years ago. Can anybody address me to the point that, would a judge, in your opinion, Mr. Ratcher, Mr. Little, Mr. Grassock, anybody say that we're being exclusionary for something that we're putting an industrial use? I want anybody to understand something, an industrial use in an industrial zone as exclusionary on a map that was created 33 years ago that we weren't doing to exclude them intentionally, but that's just the way it is. Is that still the main argument of why somebody may have suggested that we change this to S1 Conservancy? That seems to be the argument that I got from, under your advice, speaking to the Planning Commission as well as to this council. That seems to be the argument I got from both bodies, that we might be exclusionary in M2 because of the shape and size and narrowness of the zone. It might be exclusionary, so maybe we should switch it to S1. To me, it was created 33 years ago. It's an industrial use. Keep it in an industrial zone, as we've been saying. What's the argument against that?
Well, there's more than one kind of an exclusion. There's the use exclusion itself, which is called a de jure exclusion. And then there are what are called de facto exclusions, and those are really the ones that trip you up in cases like this, because what you do is you think you're getting fancy and you say, okay, there's got to be a 3,000-foot setback. Well, then somebody comes in and they plot it on the map and they say, look, there's nowhere in town where you can do that and have a 3,000-foot setback. That's called a de facto exclusion. So there's more than one kind of exclusion that's involved here. It's just not the use itself. It's all the regulations that go with it.
Right, and those regulations probably would be more determined, as we know, as a body and a municipality, we can say where these things happen. That's zoning, but not necessarily how they happen. And that might be up to the state about how far the setback is. And we've had that discussion, even though Wilkins has a 3,000-foot setback. But
yeah, which if it were challenged, we'd knock down in 2 seconds.
Right, but I'm not suggesting that we do anything that wouldn't be scientific, as I've said at previous meetings, based on actual science, because we still have to remember this is for the health and welfare. As Mr. Senko said, this is what the body's for, is for the people of Monroeville. So we can't just say it's a 250-foot setback just so it'll fit if it's to the detriment of the people of Monroeville either. So we have to go by science.
Dave, you bring up some good points.
Right.
I feel as if what we've established as far as leaving it in the M2 industrial under our current or our previous ordinance is what council's comfortable with. It sounds as if the majority of the residents are comfortable with that for now. Some of these items you're bringing up we can look into a little bit further.
Could I suggest that we have some kind of meeting so we have more than this kind of strained kind of, a few minutes? And I know I went over the 5 minutes and I appreciate your time, but is there any way that we could sit and talk about these things at greater length with anybody with Sustainable Monroeville, just, so we can discuss some of these issues?
Dave, you can call me and we can schedule a meeting with myself and Mr. Wilden and the zoning officer, or our planner. He's not the zoning officer officially yet, but fine, we can sit down and have a meeting.
And that's probably the best course of action, because that way then a lot of things can be hashed out in that meeting, and then Mr. Little can then present it to council as a whole, and that's usually the best way to act on
and that
this.
would be
I
good.
definitely agree that would be a better forum.
Sure.
Where you could have possibly our solicitor, our engineering,
Mr.
everything,
Hughes and everybody.
rather than discuss it here in a public venue.
Yeah, I understand. And, because one of the questions that the public may have is, once we go into a private meeting like that, is the suggestion that it's not going to be on the agenda at Tuesday's meeting. If we all think it should stay the way it is, my last question, I promise, is why not have it on the agenda and take the advice of the Planning Commission, which was to deny adopting that amended oil and gas ordinance to our ordinance?
Well, no,
That's what we're saying we're doing.
I think
We're just going to
I think it's
eliminate
gonna
it
go
if we
there.
fall back to the original ordinance.
I just
That's
did.
what's
So it's
gonna
not a
happen.
tabling, it's not a...
No,
it's
no,
just...
no.
We're falling back to
Al,
the
go on.
original
okay.
ordinance.
I see no reason for all
Total
the further
removal.
discussion when we're just going to eliminate
Oh,
it,
I
fall
thought it was more,
back.
let's talk, let's think, maybe
No,
we'll vote on it the
no,
following...
no. These
it's
are
gonna be
reasons.
removed.
Okay, maybe that wasn't clear to the whole public because it wasn't clear to me.
Okay, that's,
I'm glad I
I
asked
want to
that.
get rid of
Right, that
it.
could be clarified with the manager or whatever.
Yeah,
Sure, thank
get
you.
rid of it and fall back to our original.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
Lois Drumhiller. And Lois, you do understand what we intend to do as far as withdrawing the ordinance?
Oh, I do, and I also, I'm following up on some questions.
Great.
And I'm very happy to hear about putting it away in its form. I brought up before, and I have to have the context of 5 minutes. So I'm mainly going to cover some questions because I did want to get those questions addressed, and some of them were unanswered from. And per the rule, I address through the mayor, and if there isn't a direct answer and any skirting around the issue, I want to take that time back because I really would like to get
absolutely.
these.
And I tried.
I'd go ahead.
I've been.
So
I haven't done a good job monitoring the 5 minutes
I
this
think so.
meeting, but
I think
I'm
you've
doing my
been-
best.
I think you've been more than fair.
Well, thank you. But
All
I
right.
will only, if anyone else interrupts you, like I'm doing right now, that does not count against your 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, this does pick up from when Sustainable Monroeville, who I was representing, I came with written copies, but in addition to that, sent some that were electronic copies of our written commentary and the suggestions. Brought them to Manager Tim Little in February. And my question is, why did Mr. Little not share these with the Planning Commission as we had asked? That was asked. That was asked in writing. That was something that we thought, in case they didn't have a computer, that we'd give them paper copies. So that's
I
my
don't know,
question.
I don't know if they didn't get them. I can't tell you the
No,
truth.
I think it's been pretty clear they didn't get it. In fact,
Just
at
an
the
oversight.
meeting,
I
at the
can answer
meeting,
that.
at the Planning Commission meeting,
Wait, he
they-
said he has an answer.
Mr. Hugus?
You're looking at it. It was my fault.
what would have happened then?
I did not have it distributed. It's my fault.
You were in charge of distributing the
Yes.
email that was sent to Mr. Little?
He gave them to me. I did not distribute them to the planning commission.
Okay. Well, how would you remedy that?
I forgot, Lois.
No, how would
I
you?
promise I'll give them to you in the next
Yeah,
meeting.
that's what I'm asking. You would remedy that by giving it to him. I appreciate that because some of them.
And the mayor and council did receive that package, just so to be clear, we did.
And since the intent of that document, it just wasn't pulled out of thin air, I want to make sure, has anyone not read it? Because it was distributed to all of council. Is there anybody here that hasn't read it? And I'm assuming, therefore, that you've had a chance and you have read it. Because a lot of the structure and the cases that are either in the court or have reached the court for an analysis of why Article 1, Section 27 is so important and is an overriding concern for the public's health and safety, but also some of the scientific information that will help you when you inevitably will have to have an update, not only of the gas and oil ordinance, but the entire zoning ordinance, which was supposed to have been updated in 2015, and it was in its final draft form. So that would go a long way, and I'm happy to hear that, yes, you are willing to meet as we wanted, because that was our question. We wanted to meet. I know due to the Sunshine Law, we can't all meet together unless it's publicly, and it's limited right now, but I like the way you opened that up because we would like to sit down and have our input. And that input has gone a long way, not just for this body, but Oakmont has fortified some of the ordinances there that was a direct result of meeting with the citizens. That's what we want to do. We're citizens. We want to meet with you. We want to have any of the input that's backed by fact to help produce a much better ordinance. Because of the table and restricting it to M2 is one thing, but also the policy and the procedure of it is the other. So that I'm glad to hear, and I would be hopeful that I could follow that up. Who would I follow that up with?
We are not tabling.
No, I'm not
You
saying
just
that
said
you are.
the table of it. We're not tabling. We're
No,
pulling
that
it.
is the 201 table.
Okay.
Yeah, 201
All right,
table.
I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure we were all
right.
on the same page.
Right,
oh,
no, no,
Dave was
201 table.
confused. I just want to keep
201.
everybody unconfused.
Well, Lois, to
Okay.
answer your question, as far as following up, it would be directed through the manager.
Okay. The other question, I did not hear an answer to this, that at the February council meeting, and again, Mr. Little, you admitted, I think it was 23 minutes into the meeting there, that you admitted that you didn't know when Geokinetics had begun their seismic testing operations in Monroeville. And my question is that a violation of the settlement agreement?
Mr. Ratcher?
I don't believe that Geokinetics violated the settlement agreement because operations were defined to mean or were understood to mean between the parties making the agreement actual vibrosis. Knocking on people's doors and putting flags in the ground is not vibrosis. And so they have not violated the agreement, in my opinion.
In Section 6, in addition to the notice to be provided to the individual property owners required in subsection A, Geokinetics shall provide such notice information to the municipality so that the municipality may make such information available to the general public via social media, cable television, and conspicuous posting of the affected roadways. That notice was not given to you.
Can I ask a question? Real quick.
Mayor, are you going to take that?
Yes, actually, if you don't mind, well, I mean, just because it might be pertinent to what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Mr. Duncan.
Absolutely. Am I correct in saying that the state and county have permission to do seismic testing on our roadways? And thereafter, wouldn't they have to, like, I live on James Street, which is a county road. If they're going to do seismic testing, wouldn't they have to notify me? So is this possibly part of the thing? I'm just asking that, I don't know that they're doing it on James Street, but if I find a notification in my door that they're doing seismic testing, there's nothing us on this council that can do to stop that, correct?
I agree.
Am I
No, I
right?
don't
Yeah, I agree.
Wrong, or indifferent?
Yeah,
You
and
are
that wasn't my
correct, Mr.
point, though.
Duncan.
That was not my point.
I'm sorry?
My point,
Are you talking about when it was done down at
I'm
Ms.
t-
Woodhull's house?
I'm talking about the
But
fact.
she lives on 130.
Okay,
That's why I'm
this is
asking.
why I
I'm
want to direct things to the
confused.
mayor.
No,
Okay?
because we just want to make sure that we're all clear here,
I'm trying to
so.
figure out what area you're discussing.
If we,
Okay.
Mrs. Drumheller.
If you don't have the settlement
And if you could
agreement,
just.
I'll explain it.
No, start, ask
Okay.
your question again, so
Okay,
we know.
this is Section 6. Here's the settlement agreement,
Yeah.
okay? Section 6 addresses notice, and the municipality must be noticed in addition to individual property owners being noticed that there either is going to be fibrosis or there would be the intention to do the other type of testing. So that testing had begun, and you admitted not knowing that it had begun. That means that you didn't receive notice from them.
In the context of what you're saying, Lois, Georgiana Woodhall was up here and said they were down on Haymaker Road putting up their little flags.
I'm not asking that question.
Well, that's.
Where
This
at,
is
Lois?
this is the question here.
Lois, tell us
This is the
where.
question.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask
where?
the question again, okay?
Folks, if you could just let
You've
Mrs.
said it
Drumheller.
3 times.
Folks, if you just
No,
have Mrs. Drumheller
I'm going to
have
direct
the
this
floor
to
for
the
a second,
mayor,
please.
because this is how it should be done.
Just want to make sure.
Geokinetics shall provide such notice information to the municipality before any operations begin. And in the meeting, you admitted not knowing that they had begun their operations. So
Right,
if you
because-
had not known that they began their operations, was that because they had not notified you?
Municipal.
But no, the operations would be fibrosis, not,
Correct.
Right.
not putting door knocker.
Could be any operation.
Well, that's.
No, that's not what the
that's
agreement
not-
was intended.
The agreement
All
was.
right, so where does this notification that you have not understood the operations
The
were-
notification is, Mr. Hugus and I had 2 meetings with Geokinetics, all right? And that was a notification that they had all of their required documentation in, okay? And that took 2 meetings to do. And then thereafter, they put up door hangers on, they had a 30-day period in which they had to put up the door hangers, give the public 30 days' notice before they began fibrosis testing. Now, in answering your question, Lois, you can check the minutes, because Georgiana Woodall asked me they were putting up flags down on Haymaker Road. And I said, no, I did not know they were doing that. And that was the context of my answer.
That was what you meant by that answer then, huh?
Yeah, now, with Georgiana, now, I'm trying to answer your question, all right? What she was asking about, not only Haymaker Road, she was talking about, within the context of her whole conversation last month, was that Geokinetics or Pathfinder is a subcontractor that they had out there, They were doing surveying, they were putting up flags. Now, as Mr. Ratcher just said, that is not under the definition of operations. The agreement operations meant vibrosis testing. Now, to answer your question, as I did Georgie Ann's, I said, no, I did not know they were, and I still say that, no, I didn't know they were down on Haymaker Road, because they did not have to tell us that they were putting up their flags and things. The only thing they had to do is give us notification and give the public notification with door hangers 30 days in advance.
And which they did, and that's what you're
They
saying.
did.
Okay.
But perhaps we need to learn from this and maybe tighten up our definition of that. That way, we know
Yeah.
operations is defined as, I mean, what is it? Is it placing flags? Is it surveying? Is it handing out flyers? Is it putting out mailers? Or is it fibrosis? And
Yeah,
that's
well, I
where-
mean-
that would clear up some of this.
What's the point of having an agreement with oil and gas operators, especially after they sued Monroeville over the ordinance that you tried to put in place to control the operation? Okay. Okay, next question here. The ordinance that followed, now we were talking about this ordinance called 2669 that was it was actually voted on in October, to change from conditional in all zoning districts to just that of M2. That's 2669. That ordinance that followed that one, which then switched that to the zoning district S1. I'd like to know, because I did not hear this as an answer, who authored that oil and gas zoning ordinance. You could be sponsoring it, for all I know. Were members of council sponsoring that particular ordinance? The one
No, that was drafted by the solicitor.
So that was authored by the solicitor?
It was.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I didn't get a clear answer, at least in my mind, about that last time.
Well, to be clear, though, it's...
You accepted
it's a-
responsibility for writing it, that's what I heard
And
you
it's
say.
a moot point at this point, because we are
Well,
not
yeah, and I mean,
voting.
I did consult with some staff people in the building here. Tim and I talked about it, Paul and I talked about it, Mr. Weldon and I talked about it. But at the end of the day, I was the one who was responsible for physically getting the text onto the paper. So I thought it was easier to just say that as opposed to, well, he said this and he said,
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know whether or not that was, and I admit, this is a routine, so the answer should be yes. Was it submitted to the county for review?
It was, yes.
Okay. What were the recommendations?
Off the top of my head, one of the things that they recommended is that they thought we were going a little bit too far in attempting to regulate the activity. That was one thing in particular that I remember. There were some other recommendations as well. I just honestly don't remember. I read it whenever it came in about, what, a month ago, Paul?
They recommended that a municipal solicitor review the ordinance.
Right, yeah.
Right. As a general comment, it says the numbering format is hard to follow. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the section numbering in either ordinance 1440. They said 1, but that's 1443.
Yeah, they meant 43, I'm
Or the
sure.
codification, chapter 359. And it said the proposed conditional use standards are extensive. If the municipality solicitor has not yet reviewed the proposed ordinance, you had reviewed the proposed ordinance?
Sure, I read it.
He or she should be asked for guidance as to whether or not, or whether any of the proposed conditions conflict with the Pennsylvania Oil and Gas Act, which regulates operational aspects of oil and gas development. And then it said also, for the record, that some of the proposed requirements may be too vague or lacking in objective criteria to be enforceable. For example, they had a section 4 there that was talking about the applicant shall demonstrate that the proposed well site operations don't violate the rights of citizens of the municipality pursuant to the Pennsylvania Environmental Rights Amendment. So they wanted to know, how is that going to be demonstrated? So, the content and the form of that, my remembrance of that is that the solicitor checks that for the content and the format, and then submits that,
But
and
to be
then the
clear-
county gives their review.
Right, but to be clear, we are not voting on that ordinance.
It's going to be gone.
This
But
ordinance is essentially
And that's
thrown away.
understood. And as you work toward making that inevitable, because the zoning ordinance over not just oil and gas, but the much overdue zoning ordinance that was in 2015 in its draft form, needs to really somehow, some way, come up again for public review.
And it would certainly, if we certainly would act on that at all, whether it be revising the comprehensive zoning ordinance, or if we are actually going to draft maybe a different oil and gas regulating ordinance, that certainly would come in front of the public review, same kind of scrutiny that we've done with the seismic testing ordinance and now this ordinance, which we are actually now scrapping at this juncture. But that would certainly be up for public review under the same scrutiny.
Is there anyone behind this diocese who's worked for the oil and gas industry?
Yeah, me, I've worked for them.
Okay, and
That's what you want to know, right?
well, that's what there's documented evidence of. And that
Is that
meets,
right?
yeah. Well, sure, Penn
Well, how
Township
long
Board of
ago, Bob?
Commissioners.
Well, no, documented evidence. I mean, Jay Wright asked me that question 6 months ago, and I told him, you can go on the internet and find that. I mean, I'm certainly not hiding it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's more.
What does that have to do with this?
Excuse me.
Mr.
May
Mayor?
I finish?
Well,
May I
Lois,
finish?
I've been more than fair. I mean,
May I finish?
I've been more than fair with
I know you've been
the
fair.
5-minute
And
rule.
before
which
anybody
we've
finishes
doubled
my
up,
statement
and
for me, my
I will let you
statement
finish your
here.
statement.
My statement here is not only for transparency of this council, but to also be willing, by sharing some of the information that would be very helpful for you to write an ordinance that you wouldn't have to second guess, and it would include community. Mr. Mayor, you have the right to form committees of this order. You can form a citizens committee that
That is
includes
correct.
that includes Sustainable Monroeville.
You are right.
And
Thank
I
you for your
encourage you to do
comment.
so.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I will leave the floor open for public comment. We're asking to keep your comments between 5 minutes and 45 minutes, please.
I had an hour, I practiced for an hour and a half before I came here on everything I was going to say, and then I came in, the first thing I hear is you're going to, I was like, oh, that was a wasted hour and a half. Madeline
Welcome.
Havrilla?
You just wanted to see us, Madeline, we know.
I did, yeah, that's it. I'm on Thomas Street, which was in the proposed area, so that's why I continue to show up here, and will continue. Thank you, Linda, for proposing that, and all of you for setting that aside. Greg, I appreciate that you are interested in what the residents' input is. I urge you to keep industry in the industrial zone. I understand it might be challenged in court. Let them challenge it in court. The question is, the question I'd like you to consider going forward is, when you talk about a citizens committee, I talked about Linda with this. Anybody I contacted up on Mellon Plan and Boyd Hill, they did not know this was happening. And I know you had language about it in the Times Express, and it was on the webpage. People don't use that webpage. I'm sorry, they don't. We have an older population. They don't go to it. I use computers all day. The last thing I want to do is check that computer out when I get home. So I would ask that if you bring up another ordinance, could you please, if you're not going to do a citizens committee to write it, have a town hall meeting to discuss it before you even put it into an ordinance form to have it voted on or considered in the public.
If they don't read that on the internet and the other places we put it, how are they going to learn about the town hall meeting?
I don't know. I'd invite them to the town hall meeting on the cable. I would run it on the cable continuously, because there are people that follow that. And you can put your notices on about, basketball games and fish fries, and, put it on about things that matter.
We do.
Would that work?
I don't know, I'm asking you.
Well, I'm asking you. Could you put it on there, do you think, Ron? I mean,
We can put it on anything.
I think that would be a good first step, is to put it on there and just run it.
But I'm-
We're going to be discussing changing the ordinance on drilling in Monroeville. These are the areas that will be affected by it, and name them. Name them. Don't say the landfill or the waste management. Say Mellon Plan, Pioneer, Boyd Hill. You're going to be immediately impacted.
We could probably put that information out there when the time comes for that.
Yeah.
I
don't want to
heard what you- I
slide
heard what you
in,
said. You
I
don't
want
like
it to
it-
be as open as possible.
And we can put notices, at the library, the senior center, they'd be posted here publicly, so we can try to get it out there as much as possible.
You used to post notices on the door, so anybody coming in here to do their taxes or anything else.
Absolutely, I don't think we'd have an issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you. Please keep industry in the industrial zone. I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad you're going back to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is still open for public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. And we're going to call to order the agenda-setting meeting. I'm going to rearrange the schedule here a little bit. We have, under our resolutions, Elaine Kramer from Paschik and Associates. She's here to discuss Resolution 3, which is a resolution of the Municipality of Monroeville adopting the Churchill-Monroeville-Wilkins Township Implementable Comprehensive Plan as recommended for adoption by the Monroeville Planning Commission. This is a public hearing, our joint comprehensive plan with Wilkins, Churchill, and Monroeville. We've been meeting over the past year and a half or so, and it's been approved by the Planning Commission. It's also gone to the county for their review. And Ms. Kramer, if you could, please. So once again, this is Resolution number 3 that we're going to be discussing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Elaine Kramer. I work with Paschik MTR, which is a planning consulting firm based in the North Side. And I know most of you from our kickoff meeting held in this room in 2016, September. So we've had quite a bit of time working on this comprehensive plan. Municipalities are advised by the Municipalities Planning Code to update their comprehensive plans every 10 years. So I would like to congratulate Monroeville for doing so. Your last one was in 2005, so the time is right to have completed it now. Comprehensive plans are policy guides that help communities decide where they want to go and how they're going to get there. They can plan together, as in this case, by creating a multi-municipal comprehensive plan, as you did with Churchill and Wilkins. Comprehensive plans are sort of a completed report, but they're the beginning of a process just as well. We hope that comprehensive plan report provides very specific next steps that the community can pursue. They are policy guides. They do not carry the force of law. They are recommendations. And they grew out of a community process. Ours is an implementable comprehensive plan, and that means it focuses on what is feasible and implementable. It places a heavy emphasis on community input, and there's a photo of on your desks and perhaps over here.
Yeah, I think she talked with Joe.
Perhaps it's not
And-
going to show up.
No, we got it there.
There it is up there.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. So this was the community meeting, about 85 people to 100 people who, from the three communities that came to Penn Center East, and very energetic and opinionated and hopeful group. I think they were happy to know that the communities were embarking on a comprehensive planning process. Following that meeting, there were multiple sources of interviews with key stakeholders, professional staff, elected and appointed officials. Following that, there was a community-based steering committee that was assembled. And on the reverse side of your handout, there's a picture of our steering committee in action. And I would like to thank Mayor Grisak and Manager Little, as well as Paul Wielden, Jim LeMayo, a citizen of Monroeville, and Darren Morganti from the Planning Commission for participating on that committee, on the steering committee. The plan is structured on 6 key issues, which were problems that the community, through these sources of input, asked us and the steering committee to pursue. Key issues can cut across disciplines rather than rely on the silos of information of the 13 chapters of the Municipalities Planning Code. And then the completed plan report provides a step-by-step guide for that this municipal jurisdictional body can implement over time. A lot of times, for the highest priorities, a governing body will start to put line items in the budget so that your actions over time can align with the steps that are recommended in the comprehensive plan. So this planning process, as I mentioned, began in 2016 with a kickoff meeting here, attended by elected officials, and most of you, I think, were there, as well as the Planning Commission members. It also involved the Turtle Creek Valley Council of Governments. So the key issues that emerged and are detailed in a step-by-step guide are strategic communications, which is, as I listen to the meeting tonight, we all see that there are opportunities for additional communications. Shared services, because all municipalities want to take advantage of economies of scale and make the public revenues go as far as they can. Recreation, connectivity, which is planneries for trails and pathways and sidewalks and bike lanes. Property maintenance and redevelopment, property maintenance and appearance and redevelopment. So each chapter on those topics defines an issue, sets out a vision, and then sets forth a step-by-step guide for things you can try. There's also a book of appendices, under separate cover because it's also pretty thick, that includes helpful information, examples from elsewhere that you might find useful. The implementation process is that this went before the planning commissions in each of the 3 communities. They are, as we have been discussing, recommending bodies. So they make a recommendation to the governing body to take a vote on adopting the comprehensive plan. And last month, your planning commission did so, made that recommendation. Now, all 3 communities are in the same place on this adoption process. All 3 have had recommendations for adoption from their planning commissions. And now each of the 3 is holding a hearing. This is my second one. Churchill had theirs earlier this week. So then my hope is that this will come up to a vote following adequate hearing at this public hearing. And then my hope is that you will vote in favor of adoption at your next voting meeting. That's a summary of the planning process and what's up in the comprehensive plan. And I'm available for questions now or during a public comment period.
Very good. Thank you. Council, does anyone have any questions for Elaine?
I do not.
Also, this being a public hearing, if there's anyone in the audience that has questions or comments regarding this matter, they could step forward now. Seeing none, all right. You're off the hook there, Elaine. But I would just like to say, being involved with this process, dealing with Elaine and Jim from Paschik, they did a super job this entire process. It had some challenges whenever you're dealing with 3 different communities. I mean, if you can imagine how difficult it is for one community to get things done and to discuss things, and some of that we saw this evening, actually. Can you imagine having 3 different communities, and Jim and Elaine really did a super job pulling it all together. There are some challenges because the 3 communities are very different. One of the things, which is a positive for Monroeville, that I discovered throughout this process is that there's a lot of things that we have already that these other communities would love to have. A lot of the amenities and services that we provide. But the plan itself, once again, it's an implementable plan, and hopefully council will approve it at our Tuesday meeting. And like I said, we want to present a comprehensive plan that we actually do something with, instead of a comprehensive plan that just you do it and they have these huge ideas that are very expensive and you never touch it. This is an implementable plan. I believe there's a lot of content in here that we can actually make some changes here for the positive for the community and for the really the eastern suburbs of Wilkins, Churchill, and Monroeville. So thank you very much.
I can just tell you one wonderful thing that an alignment based on what the discussions I heard tonight in Chapter 6, which is redevelopment. The three communities will revise current ordinances, policies, and practices to align with best practices and community priorities. And we do recommend updating zoning ordinances and maps.
Very good.
Very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Elaine.
you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Elaine, good job.
The fact that it is in a planning book can also help a community to secure grant funding. So that's,
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's also one of the benefits of having a joint comprehensive plan, because now, you know, as state funding and county money, you know, has been drying up, so to speak, when three communities are asking, you know, we're putting our power together here, and perhaps there's more weight to it, and maybe, you know, one grant covering three communities, you know, goes a long way. So there's some definitely some positives with going with the three communities. So this document is available on our website. I believe there are copies at the library. If there are not copies at the library, we'll make sure there are.
Yeah.
If Nicole says that she's pretty sure, that means that it's pretty sure, yeah. But anyway, the document is definitely out there, and council is to review it between now and Tuesday, and hopefully pass it on Tuesday. But thank you very much, Elaine.
thank you for this opportunity tonight and for this opportunity professionally to serve your community.
Great.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Night.
Okay, council, we're going to go back to the top here and looking at the approval of minutes. What we have in front of us are the Citizens Night meeting minutes of February 8th, 2018, the council work session of February 8th, 2018, and the regular council meeting of February 13th, 2018. Any changes, questions, comments, council?
No.
None.
And our approval of tax collections. Questions, council?
Auto approve it.
Question.
Okay. List of bills. We'll start with Mr. Wilson. List of bills for this evening. Do you have any questions?
No issue, thank you.
Mr. Duncan.
I have nothing.
Mr. Arcinko.
Nothing, sir.
I didn't get your name out.
JJ Inc.
There you go. Mr. Johns. For the record. Mr. Johns.
I don't want to say
I mean,
it.
Mr. Harvey. Mr. Poach.
Not at this time.
Mrs. Gatos.
Nothing, sir.
Okay. And with payroll, any questions, comments, concerns?
No, sir.
Very good. And I'm sorry, did we have any budget transfers, Mr. Little?
I think if I remember correctly, I think there may have been some in there.
Well, did anyone have any questions about budget
No,
transfers at
as
this
a matter of
time?
fact, I take that back. No, we did not have any budget transfers. I must be thinking of last month.
Very
I
good.
didn't see any here.
The bids and proposals, would we discuss that this evening, or would that be for Tuesday, Mr. Little?
Well, we can discuss it. The vote on it would be Tuesday.
Okay, so we, on bids and proposals, would be about the library elevator addition. Mr. Little, if you...
Yeah, in council's packet is the white sheet, the first white sheet. We had a bid opening on Wednesday, February the 28th for the elevator for the library, and we received 6 bids. Bob Grubb, who is the architect from LGA Partners, we opened up the bids, and everything was in accordance with what the bid specifications were. And the recommendation from LGA Partners and myself is to award the bid on Tuesday evening to Masco Construction of McMurray, PA for $207,000. They have contained in their bid that they will complete the project within 16 weeks. Once council approves, if council does approve, they will be given notice to proceed, and they will get moving on that, and hopefully that will be done before the temperature rises a lot. I'll put it to you that way. Okay, so we were pleased with that low bid right there. It was kind of in the ballpark of what we thought, maybe even a little bit lower.
Well, the time frame's nice as well. Some were up 25 weeks. So 16 was very good.
Right.
And a lot of this money was approved through grants, correct?
$100,000 of it was a grant. None of this is from any budgeted money out of the general fund. This is all library
Fundraising.
library funding and money they have raised.
Excellent.
Very good. Council, any other questions about this or comments?
Nope.
None.
Okay. And we're going to move over to old business. As I mentioned at the top of the meeting, Gateway Schools District rezoning issue of 17-3-Z, they have requested for tabling for another month. So we won't be acting on that on Tuesday, actually. We'll be leaving it on the table. We won't be voting on that in any way, just so everyone knows. Now, Mr. Little?
Okay, under old business, item number 2 is Zocatis Properties, Penn Monroe Shops. Applicant is requesting conditional use approval pursuant to section 401.8 of the Monroeville zoning ordinance number 1443 as amended to permit a cut and fill operation totaling approximately 152,000 cubic yards of earth. The property is located at 3985 William Penn Highway in the C2 Business Commercial District. This would ordinarily be a public hearing. However, the applicant has requested tabling of this application and waive all time limits. And also, number 3 is the same thing, Zocatis for the 29,430 square foot retail plaza, and that also is the tabling, and they're requesting application and waive all time limits.
Question, Mr. Hughes, is this the same reason why they keep tabling that
It
they had
is.
from before?
It is, and I
And
had a...
is there any resolution in sight?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a conference call earlier this week. I think I have everybody's attention, and I'm hoping it'll be here next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 4, Grace Life Church. Applicant is requesting rezoning of property from R2, one-family residential, and S Conservancy to C2 Business Commercial. The property address is 4745 William Penn Highway and known as Allegheny County Lot and Block Number 1107A277 and 1107A276. The area requested is to be rezoned as 46.52 acres, and ordinarily it would be a public hearing. The Planning Commission recommended denial. The applicant has decided to rescind their request. We received notice of that this morning through an email, and I believe council has that in their packet. So there would be no action necessary to be taken on this. Although this was tabled, so would council have to make a motion to untable or just take it off the agenda? I assume we could just take it off the agenda?
I think you can take it off the agenda,
Yeah.
because even so, a failure to act on a rezoning is a deemed denial anyway, so.
Yeah, okay.
Takes care of it.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yes.
On this Grace Life Church, they've requested that they put approximately $5,000 for the rezoning, but since they've pulled, I think that Mr. Hughes and I talked, you said that you'll get back to them, would they have to take the expenses we put out on that? And then if there's any refunded money back, that would happen, am I correct?
Well, that's up to council.
Right, but I'm just saying, but,
Yeah,
okay.
we would deduct
I would
out
ask
our-
council to, since it is a church, if whatever expenses, if we have the, for the notice in the paper and anything else,
What's typical in these situations? I'm not, as far as when a
They would pay
rezoning
our
is...
expenses with.
right, pay our expenses, and then if there's anything left over, I would request that council to please, it's a church. There's a few bucks back, give it to them.
So I'm sorry, what was the, just to be clear, Mr. Hugus, what was the, was it an application fee or a permit fee?
There's both. There's an application fee and a permit. An application fee and a rezoning fee. There's 2 fees associated.
And what are those fees?
They're around $4,800 in that ballpark.
Is it based on the acreage or?
Yes,
the-
it is
okay.
based on the acreage. And the application fee is $1,000, but we'll have to deduct out any legal advertisement costs from that.
Council? I mean, I think considering the advertising, I don't know if there's any other manpower, hours that are into that.
There was no consultants that were used for review. It was just internal.
Again, if this was other than a church, I wouldn't even open my mouth.
I don't understand it. I may go to hell for this, but if I'm a resident and would I be obligated to pay that?
I don't know. Yes.
Well, you
That's
would
what I'm
unless,
asking.
you would unless there was a request and council in their discretion said they're going to waive it. So that's always in your discretion to waive a fee. Now, the other question is, what's the normal practice? And, I don't know how often you waive a fee or don't waive a fee.
Yeah, what is the past practice?
We don't get many requests for refunds. When they pay the fee, that's what is done.
That's the cost to do business.
Perhaps what if council thinks about Mr. Hugus getting them a figure of what we're really talking about, the advertising, how much time, if there's any kind of cost that were involved? Unless council has a different direction to go in.
I agree.
That's fine.
Good. That's fine.
Consider it then, okay. Okay, Mr. Little.
Okay, under new business, Mobilite. Applicant is requesting a conditional use approval pursuant to ordinance number 2635, section 40155B1A of the Monroeville zoning ordinance number 1443 as amended to install an antenna on an existing utility pole. The pole is located at 2628 Mosside Boulevard near the intersection of Haymaker Road and Haymaker Spur, Forbes Hospital Jug Handle, in the L Special Use Zoning District, and this is a public hearing item. Anybody that would like to make a comment would have to be sworn in. This is a public hearing.
Welcome. The floor is yours, sir.
Good evening.
All right, we'll open the public hearing. Sir, would you be sworn, please? Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. My name is Keith Balaschek. I live at 2309 Haymaker Road, and I represent Mobility. In this case, actually, it's Sprint.
Okay.
And what we're basically asking for, there's an existing telephone pole. It's a utility pole right at I call it the jug. It's actually the spur. And the reason we're trying to place an antenna on that pole is that we're getting more and more commuters, more and more traffic. And the newer telephones, we're kind of actually dropping phone calls on there with, from the school district, the hospital. And what this antenna would do, it would greatly improve the service from Haymaker Village up to Route 22 Business, and from Route 22 Business all the way down to Route 48 where the Sheets is. And anything in between, or Northern Pike, all the residents of Haymaker Road that utilize Sprint phones.
So your comments here obviously are based upon some RF studies that
Yes.
show that you have a coverage gap here.
Right, and also complaints from the subscribers to the Sprint phones, especially the commuters and the people at the hospital.
What's the height of the antenna you want to affix to
The
the
antenna will
pole?
be approximately 60 inches taller than the telephone pole itself. It's just a fiberglass antenna. Oh, there it is. It's a fiberglass antenna that would sit on top of the pole, and right about 10 feet above that, below that, from the base.
Yeah, stay by the
Sorry.
microphone so
I'm
we can
sorry.
hear you.
Just so we can hear you. Right there,
And
sir.
about 10 feet from the base of the pole, there would be a little meter. That's how we pay for our utility bill for the power of the antenna itself. It's a rather small meter. It's not like the ones you would have at your house. It's just a tinier, smaller version of
So
that.
the pole that it's going to be affixed to is approximately 15, 18 feet high, maybe
I
higher?
would say maybe 22 feet, 23
Okay.
feet.
Okay, so our regulation states that it can't, if it's in the right-of-way, it can't be more than, the antenna you affix can't be more than 10% of the height of the pole. So at 60 inches, you're well within that.
Yes, sir.
you're
That's
well
why I
within
talked
that
to
boundary.
Paul Weldon about that, yes.
What about ground equipment, or is there just a box on the pole?
Just a meter on the pole. That's all it's gonna
Okay,
be.
that's all you have. There's no ground equipment.
No, sir. And the power would come from overhead right to the antenna itself, just from the pole itself. There would be nothing underground. There would be no cables or anything else. Just the electric power from the overhead wire.
And this is the proverbial small cell type arrangement.
Right.
Okay.
It's basically, the antenna's about that wide. It's fiberglass. It weighs, I think, about 6 or 7 pounds.
Okay. Council have any questions for the applicant?
How long would it take to install just because of the area with disruption with traffic?
Oh, ma'am, what we would do, Mrs. Gatis, what we would do is we would actually install the equipment from the sidewalk part, so there'd be no encumbrance for traffic.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
No, sir.
Does anybody in the audience have a question, or would you like to make a comment? If you do, please come forward. Seeing none, unless you have any closing comments, we will close the public hearing.
Well, Thank you very much. No, I have no other comments. I'm just hoping this will be okay with you folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll be voting on that on Tuesday. Okay, moving over to motions. Mr. Little.
Okay, the first is for Tuesday evening, is a motion to advertise the rescheduling of the April Citizens Night and Council Work Session from Thursday, April 5th, 2018 to Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018. This is to accommodate council and myself to go to the ALOM conference that the Allegheny League of Municipality has every year. Moving on to resolutions.
Resolutions.
Okay, resolutions. The first one is a resolution adopting the Penn Monroe Shop Sewage Planning Module. Council tabled this resolution at their February 13th, 2018 meeting, and this is in concert with the tabling of the Zokitis conditional use and also approval of the plaza. So that should be tabled again Tuesday evening. Item number 2, resolution number 2, a resolution adopting the sewage planning module for the Forbes Regional Medical Clinic located at 2570 Haymaker Road. Any questions on that? Okay, item number 3, we already discussed with Elaine Kramer from Paschik and Associates, MTR. Does council have any further questions? Okay, resolution number 4 is a resolution authorizing the distribution of grant funds for the Memorial Day Parade in the amount of $5,000. This is done annually for the VFW for their parade on Memorial Day, obviously. Item 5 is a resolution authorizing the distribution of grant funds for the Monroeville Independence festivities in the amount of $12,000. And this obviously is for the July 4th parade and fireworks. Okay?
Any comments about that, or
I mean, if you want me to tell you what we're doing.
you want to say that for your report?
It's either up to you. I can do it now or then. It's up to you, sir.
Do it then.
Mr. Duncan says that you should do
now.
it then, so we'll do it then.
Just kidding, do it now.
No, do it now, we're talking about it. So, yeah, if you would, because I have some news to tell people, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's a tough
So Mr.
crowd.
Johns is the chairman of the,
Tough council.
yeah, Mr. Johns is the chairman of the 4th of July.
For what
Committee.
it's worth, this year, we are moving the fireworks back to the Monroeville Mall for various reasons, but we're going to do it. We just, myself, Mr. Little, and Mr. Estalk had a little get-together from the folks for the mall yesterday. We're going to make a couple changes down there, little things, add some porta potties to accommodate the crowd. The parade committee has been meeting regularly. We're going to add a couple things this year to the parade. We're working on having a 5K in front of the parade. We will let everybody know what's going to happen. Flyers will be going out soon. We're working on also having, we had our Community Day event all together last year. The plan right now, quickly and briefly, is parade in the morning, 9 until approximately 12:30 is usually what it takes, with a little race in front of it. After that, from approximately 1 o'clock until 6 to 7, we're not sure yet, a Community Day event at the park with food trucks, entertainment, and a lot of stuff for the kids to do. And back to 9:30, the fireworks at the mall. This year, there will be no pancake fireworks. What that means is stuff low to the ground. Everything will be up in the air, and we're getting 10% more fireworks bang for our buck.
Great.
Bang for a buck?
I think we should all run 5K.
What?
That's good. I'll drive behind you in case you fall.
Yeah.
I'll be right behind you.
I'll drive to make sure you're all right.
Bring up your extra money?
Sorry?
Make sure the ambulance.
You want me to talk about it?
Yes, that's right. We'll all be at the
Yeah.
back of one.
Very good. Mr. Johns.
I apologize.
You're fine.
The thing that's left, when I took this over, this is the 4th year, there was a 5-year contract. That contract has expired. I myself, I've worked pretty hard with some of these folks to re-up our contract. We had to spend a few more dollars. Thanks to the municipality here and the Convention Visitors Bureau and Sean Logan, they each contribute the funds that give us the monies to do what we need to do. And even though you see 12,000 here, there's another 12,000 coming from the CVB. The fireworks, they wanted 20 grand this year from 17. We've renegotiated back and forth. We're at $18,000. It costs the committee approximately another $6,000 to put the parade on. A lot of those folks that march in the parade do get paid. If a lot of people don't realize that, they do get paid to do that. We were short a few dollars. I went to Mr. Little and council after talking to the folks at the mall. They wanted these porta potties. That's going to come to $1,125, which we're going to be able to put 6 of them down there, 3 of those being handicapped. They'll tell us where to place them. We will have another $1,000 that we are going to help pay the folks at the mall for their security folks. There's 16 of them down there, not counting our own police folks that help. And from that, there's a lot of overtime involved. So we're going to come up with $1,000, and everybody at the mall will be happy, we'll be happy, and hopefully everything will go as planned.
Good job.
Very good.
Good job, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mr. Little, we'll move over to the next resolution.
Okay, number 6, a resolution authorizing the advertising for bids for the 2018 road resurfacing program for the attached list of roadways throughout Monroeville. Any comments, questions on that from council? Mr. Hugus has given...
I have a comment.
Sure.
I'm in the 6th Ward representative. I understand that I'm actually one of the smallest and the lowest amount of municipal roads. A lot of my roads are county and one state. But I have 2 roads getting resurfaced. And there's some that, whatever, but I'm going to stick to my ward. And it's called a seal coat with flush coat. And I contacted Mr. Hugus today, and he explained to me what I used to call it was tar and chip, which I'm on board with. I think that's a lot better than what they used to do, like a seal coat, like coating your driveway.
A slurry seal.
Yeah, a slurry seal. And that would wear off. You could see the yellow lines coming through after a few months. But I'm on board with this. It's just, my ward has the smallest amount of mileage, but it's one of the older wards. And I have just as many taxpayers, that live in my ward compared to other wards, probably more. I hope that, we can do something with this infrastructure.
Well, Mr. Hugus, what's the total amount budgeted for our resurfacing program?
$800,000.
Okay, and out of the $800,000, with my 2 roads, we're going to spend $24,268 in my ward, in the 6th ward. And I'm okay with that. I understand that. I understand that the money's tight. But we all up here need to get together and do something with this infrastructure. I mean, I can remember years ago when we'd spend millions of dollars a year on our infrastructure, our roads, our storm sewer maintenance. We have the greatest. Our 911 center, our 5 fire halls, our senior center, library, parks, that's all great. But if you can't get to them because the roads are at such a point, we did happen to find $1.1 million for our radio and 911 upgrade this year. I suggest that this council works together to find $1.1 million to put into our roads and our infrastructure.
Well, that's a good
For next
suggestion.
year.
Yeah, because we have, in your report, the report in front of you, I believe, Mr. Hugus, the amount was we should be doing, is it 1.8 million to stay
Minimum.
steady?
Yeah.
Minimum.
We should be paving a
Is that the
little
figure
over-
you gave us?
Yeah, we should be paving a little over 7
Paul,
miles per
you
year.
can recall years where this municipality budgeted multi-millions
Right,
of dollars.
we used to be like 1.5 to 1.7 per
Annually.
year.
But that
Per
money
year.
was borrowed a lot of the time, and we made the decision to
I
not
fully
borrow money.
understand that.
But now we're reaching a point.
But we can find money for other projects.
I agree with you.
I think our infrastructure is one of our main things
Okay,
that
but
we all should be
so is
looking
the
at.
public safety. Now that
I understand public
that's-
safety.
that's
I
been
really
taken
do.
care of, I think
Believe it
we
or not.
all need to now, and I am in total agreement with you. We now need to take the step to add more money to the paving road program.
And we support a lot of things.
Correct. And I think
which are
people
great for
need to
Monroeville.
understand.
But if our infrastructure falls apart,
Correct.
that can all go to
And there's a whole,
wherever.
we should have an entire capital improvement line item in next year's budget, and the people of Monroeville need to tell us, do you understand that we will have to raise your taxes?
Well-
get that done, or where do you want us to get the money?
Well, we can understand and let the
before we get
residents
that-
know
before
that
we
there's
get that
going to be
far,
an
let me-
increase here shortly.
It has to
as
be.
far as the storm sewer water management. But I'm talking our roads,
That's a capital improvement, different than an MS4.
most definitely. So possibly, I know we don't like to take loans, but, I mean, to maintain our roads,
Well, let me ask a couple of questions, if I
Yeah,
can, Your Honor.
one
before-
moment, everybody. Yeah, Mr. Poach.
Yeah, first to Paul, for just a second, so I can understand some of the information that was in front of us. A terrific report, we got a hold of it, it's 20-some-odd pages long, a lot of good information that was in there. So in this process, number one, we've rated and got a process where we've evaluated the roads and the structures and the status of them, good, bad, fair, et cetera, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what was interesting was that I found that we had about almost 14 years' worth of data in place, and plus we have this year's to add into it as well, too. So if we took a look at those numbers across the board, it appears that the median number of the status of these roads, it doesn't really matter if we looked at it 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. They're within a very, very small difference in terms of the status of those roads. In other words, this problem's been going on for quite some time. So the numbers are pretty solid in terms of that. Their status is, we're in the 5.9 to 5.49 range, that median range or so that we had in there. So those are pretty solid numbers from about 15 years of data. Does that seem about right?
It is.
Okay, that's in good shape, too. So in other words, in the latter part of the report, where we had the graph, we're really kind of losing. We're falling behind.
Oh, we're way behind.
Way behind. We're over 50-some-odd% of the roads are in a status that we don't want them to be, in the 5.99 range, which I believe is just
Right.
fair.
I mean, and again, I'm using round figures here. We should be doing about 7 miles of roads per year. Now, again, the report also reflects, we have 109, 10 miles of roads. We also have to look at 34 parking lots that we own and maintain, which they are tremendously deteriorating too.
Sure.
You go to the Public Works facility, in and around that whole facility, it's terrible. The park is coming up on its, we're close to being 15 years old at the community park.
Right.
It's another big ticket item, the Public Safety Training Center.
I probably want to
15 years.
emphasize our roads prior to parking lots.
Well, but when we look at it,
correct?
Steve, but,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but we
I did have
also
the floor
include,
there for a minute.
we also include parking lots, Steve, because,
Actually, I
they're
did.
part of our infrastructure, so we look at them, even this parking lot here, this building was opened in 2000. It's 18 years old.
Sure.
You drive through the parking lot, you can see deterioration of this
Let
parking lot.
me keep moving with this piece of it. So number one, you're going to need action from us. I think we all collectively, it sounds like, know we need to pay attention to the infrastructure. Not a question. Okay? Not a question about that
Well, let me
at
go
all.
back real quick, though.
Sure, please.
We go, using round figures again. We should be doing about 7 miles of roads per year.
And that's just keeping up.
And that's to keep pace.
Okay, that was
We
the
haven't
part
done
out of
that.
your report.
And we are about 50 miles behind where we should be.
That was in
And that's
that last
pretty dramatic.
graph of the report that
Right.
was in there, too. So that has it pretty far behind. So we agree to that. So number one, we need to address the emergent need that we have. In this past couple of weeks, as we've got to talk to people, it seems to be one of the most important things people have asked me about, and we've all received calls on. So number one, critical infrastructure is high on the list, no question. We have our homework in front of us, too. And then these documents also indicate we need to get the next bit of information, the number squared away for this next year,
Right.
what's in front of us, too. So those are the two key issues right now, short-term, and then we need better long-term planning. And that sounds like we all seem to agree on infrastructure?
Well,
Or any
Capital-
question
on
about the...
capital
You know,
improvements.
I'd like to
On
continue.
capital improvements.
Capital
I'd like
improvement,
to
not
continue-
infrastructure, capital
Well,
improvement.
critical infrastructure was the term.
I'd like to continue on my first thing, if possible.
Yeah.
Mr. Duncan, go ahead, please.
Okay, prior to any of these roads being done, Public Works crew has to come in. Now, this seal coat with flush coat, that's what all the words are getting, okay? I'm going to use one street that I'm going to get done out of two, is Ohio Street. It's deteriorated. So Public Works has to come in there, dig up all these soft spots and potholes and patch them prior to this seal coat with flush coat. So I don't know that that's part of the budget. I don't believe it is. It's just a...
Well, if we look at it with the first option, it was not, Steve, and that was the numbers. I usually put money in. If you look at the next alternative, there is money
Right,
in
I've seen
there
the
because-
alternatives, yes.
Yeah, because with the paving section of it. There's more of an infrastructure repair with storm sewers.
And just so this council and public knows, also, they have to, prior to us doing anything to a road, seal coating or whatever, we'd like to get the storm sewers repaired prior to, camera it and repair it if
Right, and then
needed.
that's
So that's
part-
another added
Right, part of the
cost.
progression is, once council approves the list, we put this list out to Public Works right away, so they can get started on it. But it also goes to all the utility companies, especially the municipal authority.
And that's catch basin repair also.
Right, and so it goes to the municipal authority and all the other utilities to repair any utilities that they may want to before we do our work.
So I guess my point is, there's a lot more involved than just the streets that are being done. There's so much, so many things that have to happen prior to that application. Just so everybody's aware of that.
Right, yeah, and one
And
thing.
again, me having two in the 6th Ward.
Are you going on, number 1 or number 2? There's two, we were given 2 different
Well,
approaches.
naturally, I'm going off of number 1, not the optional one.
Okay, because I mean, in the optional one, I have 2. I'm in the same boat you are in the first option.
Right.
And I'm not real
because
happy
it's
about it
much
either.
more
Yeah.
expensive. But that's option 2.
Yes,
So I'm anticipating that we're going to accept option 1.
which I don't know that. That's what
For
I'm.
whatever reason. No, it's just my
Yes,
thought.
okay.
Okay, I'm just,
Well, I mean, what I would suggest, and one thing I would just add, Mr. Harvey, I'll give you the floor in a second, but one thing to add to all this is what we can probably all agree on at this point is, this winter was terrible
For
Oh,
every
so
for our
horrendous.
roads.
Everywhere.
Which is kind of almost an unforeseen, variable that, I mean, I think the engineering department does a great job of categorizing the roads and grading them, but this has been a very rough winter with our freeze-thaw cycles. And to what I'm hearing here, I mean, from Mr. Duncan and the council in general, I mean, maybe we need to not necessarily address in the future years, but maybe look at this second option that's given to us, even if it is more expensive. Is there a way we can come up with more funding? Mr. Harvey?
Well,
And more than that.
I guess I want to say I 100% agree with Mr. Duncan and the rest of the council. I also, it's not hard to figure out, as Mr. Hugus has pointed out in his reports, that every time we're thrifty and we try to save our money and not raise taxes and not do this and not spend money on that, the infrastructure deteriorates a little more. And then it ends up costing us more in the long run, and the example would be Elliott Road. Last year, Elliott Road was bid out at around, I think, $84,000 to fix it properly, and this year it's up to 102. And that's in 1 year.
That's correct.
So I think personally that we saved the residents money for a purpose. And I would like to have council consider taking $1 million out of our savings and adding it to this road improvement budget and getting more of the roads done.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I think we all agree.
but where do we stand there? How do we fulfill all of our other deficits? You know, I mean.
Right.
Well,
It's easy to say, take $1 million out.
No, he doesn't mean out of it, he means add to it.
I mean, add
Add another $1 million into.
add
road
another $1 million
improvements
to the road paving program.
From the fund balance.
Okay.
Mr. Arasinko, did you have a
Well,
comment?
and I'm in agreement with everybody's comment. My comment would be, so we all on the same page, and it is public knowledge. Josie, if you would give us on Tuesday for this council to consider, what is our actual fund balance? What do we actually have to operate? I want exact dollar amounts. Mr. Harvey's suggesting $1 million. I even think if we even go a little bit more, that's okay too. Because, Ron, you hit the nail on the head. We have kicked the can down the road so far, now we're in trouble. And if we continue just to nickel and dime this, we're going to be in more trouble.
It's going to keep
This
getting
is-
worse. It's not going to get
If
better.
we.
Exactly, and I
Okay, so
think-
if we add $1 million, then Mr. Yugas needs to give us an update as to what would be added for our $1 million.
Well, just let him go with what he has.
Will
but then
Ward
let's
6
talk-
get more than 2 roads?
Well, if Ward's
Tentative?
not getting more than my 2, I'm
It's a
not in.
question.
Well, it's done pretty, I mean, I think the engineering
Pardon
department
me?
tries to do it as objectively as possible.
Yeah, one more. I'll get 3.
So, Mr. Hugus, if I could, just to,
Mr. Mayor, may I finish?
yeah, you had the floor. Finish your point, please.
The bottom line is, please, for council, are you okay with Josie presenting the numbers? what we actually have. There's no national secrets here.
No, and I would also like to have a rough idea of what we would
And
do
then
with
and
it.
I agree, and then let Paul run with what he has at 800,000, and let him come up with whatever dollar amount we decide that we need to take from our current money that
But
we have.
now you're taking us
and let him
into
run.
another
What-
month.
What do we currently have budgeted now?
800,000.
So we're talking another million, so
Right.
$1,800,000.
1.8.
All of a sudden, bang, there it is. We budgeted 800,000, and all of a sudden, we got a million.
Well, that's out of the general budget.
I know, but we need our general budget, don't we?
Right. Well, that's where,
How about
last
our-
year
how
we
about
had
our ratings
$250,000.
But we're not
That's why
we're not
we're
borrowing that
borrowing.
money.
I don't want to take any bond
Not
money.
borrowing money.
No
I
way
think
do I want to
considering,
borrow.
I mean, I think it's a good suggestion. I think considering the bad winter,
I think it's something to look into.
I think it's, yeah, exactly. I think it's
Whether it
also,
be a million or 500,000 or whatever.
well, considering also the $1.8 million figure is what the engineering department suggested as far as us staying on top of the paving to some degree. But, so to Mr. Arasinko's question, is council okay with at least having Josie give us the information?
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
I think
We'll start
it's
there.
needed.
Wait,
The
Mr. Little?
information is already here,
Josie,
okay?
one less thing for you to do.
All right. I asked Josie
I gave
because,
him a report.
yeah, the information's already here because I knew council would want to discuss this at the meeting. Right now, we're anticipated at the end of the month having about $8.4 million, including reserve in the fund balance. Now, that's a very good fund balance. The question is not what we have in the fund balance. The fund balance, as I've been saying for 2 years, is growing nicely, and there's 3 reasons why it's growing, as I've said over the last 2 years. The first reason is because the business privilege tax, the tax office has done a good job of going after delinquent business privilege tax, and we've had good tax collection. The second reason is that we had not hired personnel that had been budgeted due to different reasons, okay, police, in the engineering and planning department, so we saved money there. And the third reason is because the department heads do a good job of keeping their budgets in line. So ever since, let's say, the last 3 years, we have increased the fund balance. Now, and that's a good thing, but it isn't on the revenue side. It's what's coming up and, coming down the pike. This year, for instance, to give you one example, we're not buying any police cars this year. I told Chief Cole that 9 months ago. I told all the department heads last summer, you're not buying any capital equipment for 2000, and I said it for 17. So we haven't bought any, we had police cars already budgeted, and they come in December, I believe it is. So you have to think about what is coming down the pike, and some of the council members I talked to about this. I have to look down the road, as we all do, what's coming down the pike in a year. We're going to have to buy 3 more police cars. We're way behind on computers, different things of that nature. And as I've always said for the last 2 years, it's always the unknown out there that is going to happen. $1 million is a little much, all right, in my opinion. I mean, if you want to do 500,000, but that's my recommendation. If you want to do $1 million, we can do $1 million. But 18 months down the road, there may be something that comes up that we may need the money for. And I'm not saying $1 million, it's money well spent.
If you don't fix those roads, the police cars won't be able to ride on them.
Well, good.
And I agree
And if
with
we
what
don't
you're
get it-
saying, Tim, but you know what? This council has to answer to the residents, and they want the roads fixed.
Okay.
Let's fix the damn roads.
Yes.
They really do. They really do.
Enough said on
Well,
it.
yeah, the people are paying for tires
It's their
and
money,
rims
not
and-
ours.
Okay.
Well, so then let's, so we have that number. I guess the next step would be, as far as thinking ahead for Tuesday, is what we're going to be voting on.
Well, we have to have Paul make up a
Revamp
new...
Paul will have to come up
I
with
think
a-
we have to also, to my point before, and I probably didn't make it clear in that time, is readjust the plan that he put in place, consider the additional fundings. Folks, it's across the board. I know we talked about wards and the way it's divided off and the reports presented to us, but we all have a problem to do that too. So possibly readjust the plan. This is the right format, this is the right structure, continue. We have the right rating of it.
And a revision of the Pfizer.
Can I ask?
That's correct.
Can I ask a
Okay.
question?
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Mr.
No,
Johns.
I don't. It's just my way of thinking. It certainly doesn't mean I'm right. In the fourth ward, let's just use my plan, for example. Turnpike Gardens.
Which is in good shape, coincidentally, by the
Turnpike
numbers,
Gardens.
yeah.
Okay, that's a plan. To me, what roads take more precedent? A road that I call a main highway. I keep hating to say Elliott Road, but that's a main highway that everybody uses to get to their homes. So when you're looking at,
We use that as a collector road, so that's a good term.
well, it makes sense, collector road. So when you're looking at these things, no matter what ward it's in, you're in Monroeville, do you basically try to look at a collector road before you look at Lawley Drive or wherever?
Yeah, just so the public,
My opinion only.
yeah, and just so the public knows, we've talked about this before, but the Paisley score, every road is given a score. So there's different metrics that the engineering department goes out and grades it. Score of 1 to 10. 1 is terrible, 10 is a brand-new road. Then there's also, which kind of to your point, there's a priority number that's assigned because you may have a terrible road that's maybe a dead-end cul-de-sac that has one house on it versus a terrible road that is like Elliott Road that is a collector road. And that's where it also gets prioritized. So it is a objective list.
Right.
Now, I'm assuming council, as far as to direct Mr. Huges's department, do we just go down the list of the next roads that are a priority and with that low Paisley score? Because everything, Mr. Huges said, if you could help me out here, every road is given both a Paisley score and a priority number.
That's correct.
And you basically figure out how much money we have, and then you address X amount, whatever.
We take the dollar amount, we try to fit what is the best plan to that dollar amount.
Well, I think we let him continue with that
That's
plan,
right.
just add the money.
And it-
Yeah,
and
let's
if I
Yeah,
may,
let's do it.
Add the $1 million and
Absolutely.
give us some new lists.
Yeah.
if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan.
mill and pave should be a priority if we're adding all this money.
Well, that was my question.
Now, understand this,
Correct.
council.
I agree.
Milling and paving, you come in, you mill the road, you repave the road. We're not tar and chipping, we're not seal coat.
We're
wash
not painting the
coat.
road again all over.
Mr. Hugus, that would be adjusted also.
Yeah, well,
Understand, if we're going to use this money, use it
Yeah, it makes sense, but do it right.
yeah,
And-
properly.
And I was going to ask that, Steve, because,
I mean, don't you agree?
What you have here is a combination of both. And you're never going to get rid of seal coating because there are certain streets
Right,
that
and
are
makes sense.
That's understandable.
more useful with a seal coating than there is a mill and pave.
Sure, makes
So you're
sense.
never going to get rid of it.
Right.
But so you have to blend it in with your milling and paving. And back to your question, yeah, I mean, we have some major collector roads. Old William Penn Highway, Elliott Road, Illini,
Spillman Lane.
Rosecrest, Logan's Ferry Road. I mean, they're big roads that chew up a lot of money.
Garden City Drive.
Oh, yeah, College Park Drive.
Yeah, because to mill and pave, what we're talking about,
Oh.
it's $250,000 per mile.
Correct.
$250,000
Get a lot
per
done,
mile
sure.
to mill it and pave it.
Right.
So that does,
Understand, but where the roads are so far deteriorated, we should probably. look at
Absolutely,
mill
yeah,
and
because you're
pave
throwing-
Rather than
We all agree with that.
putting a
yeah,
band.
we all agree. You're
We
throwing
agree.
money at.
Right.
And you know what, council, just food for thought for everybody, that's just not for this year. We're gonna have to do this for the next 2 to 3, 4
That's-
years down
Well, we
the
need
road.
we need to do some work on that.
That's a
We need to
budget
come up with a new,
discussion.
we need to come up with
Well,
a
I'm just
plan
saying,
for
though, I'm just
all
taking a
capital improvements.
blanket statement, because
Police
that's where we're
cars,
at.
the buildings, everything. We've been spending no money. It's like buying a home and then just letting it deteriorate. And that's what we've been doing by saving money. What is the purpose of saving money if we're not going to fix up all these problems?
It's their
agree.
money.
And we may
need to
have
fix
to
it.
put a tax increase into and put a line item with a capital improvement, and I think maybe a 5-year or 3-year capital improvement plan, Mr. Little, may be called for, so we can show people what we're thinking of getting done, but then it has to take care of roads and everything. But I think if we're going to take this $1 million, just my thought, this year, out of our savings, let's give as much as we can back to the people, and then starting next year, when we have a capital improvement in place and the money for it, then we start getting back into the milling and paving. That's my thought. Try and give as much
Question,
as we can back
Tim.
now.
Well, it's almost a waste of $1 million if you're not going to,
But sealing and all of that still helps some of the existing roads.
Mr. Wilson.
it's putting a Band-Aid.
Well, but you're only getting 4 miles,
Aren't we
Steve.
required by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to maintain a certain amount of our budget in our fund balance?
Well, not necessarily. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends 20%. That's gone up. I mean, there's no law basically saying that you have to have that amount of money. It's a Government Finance Officers Association.
I thought there was something that the state required us to have as far as a fund balance.
Isn't it a recommendation?
It's more or less a recommendation, yeah.
Pardon me?
It's more or less a recommendation.
What's our percentage at now?
Well, if, at the end of the year, I mean, we were over 20%.
Okay.
25%.
So we were at that mark
Yeah.
at the end of the year. Okay. Well, I mean, council, so we can certainly discuss this more on Tuesday, but it sounds like at least let's get the information in front of us, then we can decide how much of the money we want to transfer, and then the next thing, how to use it.
How to spend it.
And how to spend it.
And does Mr. Hugus have enough direction from us to proceed forward with the
I have
plan?
a
What
lot
else
of
do you-
direction, but I haven't compiled it yet here. So what are we going?
I think I would like to go two
Yeah,
different
wait till
directions to
Tuesday.
see what,
Tune in later.
I mean, what kind of a budget number are we talking?
we're saying get another $1 million.
$1.8 million.
1.8.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right around that
And-
figure.
and we don't want to do seal coating in the neighborhoods. We want to do the
Well,
paving.
I don't know about that.
Well,
that's-
we want to use your,
I brought that up for
It's
discussion.
your,
Yeah.
It
it's your
makes more
preference.
sense to fix a road permanently
But
than it does to put a Band-Aid on it, is my opinion.
I agree with you, Steve.
And
You're
that's right,
just-
if you have a collector road,
Right.
whatever, wherever it is, who's ever worn, I could care less where it is, and it's deteriorated, seal coating is not gonna help it.
No,
It's not.
That's
it's a waste of money.
But you're going to get 6 times the mileage out of a seal coat than you will a paving. Now, obviously, it's not going to last as long. It's only going to last 5 to 7 years. And
But in the
and
meantime,
that's
we
what
started
did.
capital improvement, we started to get more money in,
But
and
I'm
we
saying,
can
like,
start
some
to
of these
mill and
collector
pave
roads, I don't know how you
regular,
possibly do
No,
on
you
a
can't.
regular
That's what
basis.
I'm saying. You're never going to get away from it.
No,
Right.
Totally.
I understand.
Now,
I
we
just-
did we did the entire Turnpike Ordinance Plan 2 years ago. with the
Right.
seal
Yeah.
coat.
And it's
And
still
don't
not good.
forget, your
It is
five-man public works crew's got to come in and prep all these prior to this.
Right.
Correct.
I was just going to say that
5 man.
logistically, that's going to put a huge demand on
Public works.
Public Works. It is.
So your grass cutting, your maintenance,
all right,
your
we'll get summer help.
buildings that we're talking about, our parking lots and such, are all going to have to be,
Okay.
What else do
unless
you
we
need?
hire 10 more people.
Paul, do you
What
have
else
enough
do you need
idea of
from
what,
us?
of what to do? Give us some ideas?
Paul, let me ask the question this way, perhaps. What if we would have approved in this year's budget, back in December, $1.8 million? What's the program you would have put in front of us? Maybe think of it that
Still
way.
would have been a combination, but there probably would have been more of a traditional paving associated with it.
Do that then. Then do that, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us something
Pretend
like
like
that.
this is what it's been, the money's been there the
Yeah.
whole
Yes,
time, and maybe
Yes.
That'd be fine.
present.
Again, and I go back, and I totally agree with Steve that it's going to put a bigger demand on Public Works to get the roads prepped. So your long range of getting your paving done, we usually pick between when school's out to when school comes back in session. That may not happen.
But if the money's
It may-
allocated,
it
even
may
if
go
some roads
beyond
get
that.
pushed
That's okay.
either later or
okay.
even to
That's
next
okay.
year,
Yeah,
they're still paid for
The
it.
situation's critical enough that
Correct.
we need to complete that.
Exactly.
And I also think we need to ask our public to give us direction on what you want us to do for next year. Do you want a capital improvement? Would you be willing to pay the extra $1 million, we'll say, we'll just throw that out there, to keep these roads upgraded, to keep the system working, to keep our buildings upgraded? It's got to come from somewhere. We can't keep pitching pennies. Things are starting to fall apart, and we need input. And it's my town, and I pay the same as everybody else, and I don't want my town falling apart. So I'm just giving you my personal opinion. The services I get for the little bit that I pay, when you break your taxes down, if you look at what you're paying, not the bulk, what you're paying for just Monroeville and what you're getting for it, every day of the week, give it to me. I'm in. That's all I have to say.
And part of the, when I look at this, and Steve I'm going to pick on Steve's one street.
Go ahead, go for
Is
it.
Park Place. To get to Park Place, you got to go down Huntington, down Glenwood to get to Park Place. So by the time you're done getting Park Place done, you've beat up the other roads, taking all the millings out and taking all the asphalt in. So we tried to even like do the whole little neighborhood together, get it done and get out of there, so you're done with it.
Park Place isn't on my list.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Well, in either case, though, Paul, one of the other things in your
Still on
report you
high.
brought out that I think's significant
On the
to
next
bring this to conclusion, you made a recommendation, you mentioned in your report how a number of communities have come to us, look at what we've done, the tactics you've applied to get this problem done.
Stevie.
And been looked at it, and looked at it's a good practice.
Right.
So in terms of best practices, what you're doing is terrific. Proceed forward. I think we all agree with that, based as if, like the mayor said.
Actually, I
we
had a phone call today from an engineer from another community, one of our bid specs for seal coating, because they want to do.
So we're on the right track, we're doing the best practices.
Yeah.
Please proceed forward. I think we all agree with it, and we can talk
Something
about it
needs
more
done
for
in-
next week, too.
On Tuesday, perfect.
And I would,
Thank you.
And I would ask in the interim if council would please not bother Mr. Hugus between now and Tuesday about
He's
getting
going to be
extra-
busy, yeah, we can't, yeah, he's going to be a little busy, yeah.
You're going to get 7 phone calls tomorrow morning.
No.
Mr. Little,
No.
good.
No.
I agree with you.
He's busy.
Park Place was on the alternate.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
If we
I'm
could move
fine.
over,
Stevie, do you see what I'm saying?
we're good? You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to have lunch tomorrow?
No.
I should
Stop,
tell,
Jim.
I should tell all of you now that I will not be in the office tomorrow. and that was
Paul's taking a
pre-planned.
vacation day.
Let's continue.
All right, let's move forward. So,
Smokes.
folks, we're still on resolutions.
We are?
Number 7.
Number 7, Mr. Little.
Okay, a resolution of the Municipality of Monroeville authorizing nighttime milling, paving, and reconstruction work of Monroeville Boulevard to minimize the impact on high volumes of daytime traffic and enhance traffic safety. Just a comment on that. That is in their letter that they may need to pave in the evening. Their engineer, who I talked with this week on the phone, has told me that they are not going to be doing any nighttime. Now,
If they have
yeah,
to,
it's
that's
just a-
fine. Get it
That's just a,
done.
Hey, we asked for Monroeville Boulevard to be repaved. Hallelujah.
Let's get it done.
And they're all-
Get it done.
And they're also working with the Monroeville Municipal Authority at the same time. So
Right.
everybody's working together, so whatever it takes.
Since
Rather
we're-
have them do it at night.
Since we're talking about that, I have under my report, and I might as well bring it up now, they have, and Paul Hugus and I have talked about this.
Okay.
And I've talked to Bob Ratcher, I've sent Solicitor Ratcher some information on this. The county is saying that we have to reconstruct some ADA ramps. That's the disability ramps, the depressions that comes down, that's a federal law.
From the sidewalk.
Exactly, from the sidewalk, that they have to be upgraded, there's different standards. Now, I don't know the answer to that, if we do have to do that or we don't have to do that. But if we do have to do it, they have given me a spreadsheet on the cost, and it's $54,000. Now, it remains to be seen whether or not we have to do that, but I just thought I'd bring that to council's attention so they're aware. Now, there's an agreement that I have. Now, I haven't put it on the agenda because it has to be done by April, and then it has to be gone to the county. Now, we're still investigating, Mr. Hugus and Mr. Ratcher, whether or not we have to do that or not. So that's just an FYI
Bill
for
on the
council.
table.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, number 8, a resolution authorizing the display of an event banner for the 2017-2018 WPIAL Gateway Girls Basketball Champions located at the corner of Route 22, William Penn Highway, and Route 48, Moss-Side Boulevard, in the right-of-way of property belonging to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. As we have done this in the past, we have a continuing resolution that we have to give to PennDOT because that's their right-of-way for liability purposes, and we're going to be, the school district will be putting up a banner celebrating the girls' basketball team's WPIL championship over Oakland
It
Catholic.
was
on
installed
Saturday.
today, Tim.
Pardon me?
It was installed today.
Oh, it was installed today?
Yeah.
Well,
Can we have
it
Joe take a
It
photograph?
should have been done, it should have been done,
Guess we're
waited
okay with
until
it then.
Tuesday, after Tuesday.
Oh, who cares? It's all
It's
good.
called anticipation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hopefully no one from
anticipation.
PennDOT
All
is
right.
watching this.
Anticipation
Hey,
of
right.
Tim, can we have Joe take a photograph of that so we can display it when? the
Yeah,
girls
that's all,
come?
you hear that, Joe? Yes, sir. All right.
Thanks, Joe.
You got
Thank
that,
you.
Joe.
Tim, are you going to announce the girls coming?
Yeah, we have the girls' basketball team will be coming Tuesday evening to the council meeting to receive a proclamation from the mayor.
Yeah, and if I could just, real quick on that, along the same lines, just so everyone's aware, we also have a Gateway sophomore, one of our swimmers, Olivia Livingston.
Did you invite her?
She won, well, this just came out today, I noticed in the paper. She won the 50-yard freestyle Whippeal championship and the 100-yard freestyle.
Jeez.
This is a sophomore. She set the Whippeal record in the 50-yard freestyle as a sophomore. She did that
Wow.
representing Gateway. And she's actually the defending state champ. She was a state champ as a freshman. So I'd just ask council perhaps if we're going to recognize a Whippeal champion for basketball, if we can maybe do something up for Olivia as
Sure.
well.
Great idea.
Sure.
Excellent.
So,
Absolutely.
very good. All
I
right.
think Tuesday they have championships going on somewhere.
Oh, the girls?
I think so.
We'll have to get the
Yeah,
schedule
the
for.
swim team, the swim team.
Yeah, the Whippeal championships
Oh,
were last
swim
week, and
team.
then I think the state meet will be coming up
Well,
shortly.
if it's swim team, we can always do her next month if we need to. If she
Right.
can't make it this Tuesday, maybe we can do it
Yeah,
next.
all the
Thank
swim
you.
will be over this month.
But it's great to recognize, these young men and women in our community. Now, certainly, these are
All
all
the good
women,
things.
certainly in our community,
Yes.
but the football
Great.
team was up here a couple of months ago, and kudos to all of them. So,
Okay.
Tim, next item, actually, you got all that, so we're going to move to the ordinances. Mr. Ratcher, we have the first one about the oil and gas, which we are going to be removing from.
Well, actually, what you should do is keep it on the agenda so we can act on it, you can act on it, and effect the withdrawal of it.
Okay.
So it should appear here on the agenda for the purpose of your taking the action that you stated, the council stated that they want to take.
So would we, on Tuesday, make a motion, or a council make a motion to remove it?
To remove it, withdraw it, whatever,
Okay.
however
Yes.
you want to call it, but that would be the appropriate
Okay.
action.
The best language for it. Very good.
Yes.
And can we do that at the beginning of the meeting so that we
That's a
don't
great
have to
idea.
have a full discussion
Yeah.
on it? Thank you.
Very good. And then Mr. Ordinance, or Mr. Ratcher.
Mr. Ordinance.
Mr. Ordinance, that's what we call him.
I like that.
An ordinance of the Municipality of Monroeville amending ordinance number 848 regulating traffic, parking, and impounding of vehicles, in parentheses here, a stop sign on Dawkins Drive. So we're apparently putting a stop sign up on Dawkins Drive, and this is the authorizing legislation.
Mr. Hugus, Dawkins Drive, if you could explain this for us,
The
please.
manager's office received a complaint that a stop sign was needed at that specific intersection. There was not one there, so you have to pass an ordinance to install one. It's a T intersection, so it's a justified stop sign.
It passed all the,
Because it's a T intersection, you don't have to do an engineering and
Yeah,
traffic
that's
study.
fine. That's fine.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, council? Okay,
I have one item under my report.
we'll move right over to that.
Mrs. Gatos asked me to review the vehicle policy ordinance, which is quite a comprehensive ordinance. And it's unusual in the fact that it's regulating something that typically would not be regulated by an ordinance. But in any event, I'm going to review that document and make suggestions to council for potential revision. And we should have something for you next month.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
May I ask what was that concern?
The idea that when you have people that have to report here to, we'll just pick this building per se. The people that work here that have vehicles that sit out in the parking and they stay out there all the time. They come in, let's say they have to be here at 8 o'clock. Well, they come in at 8 o'clock, it takes a half an hour for them to clean off their cars, heat them up, whereas they could come in their vehicles and go right to work and we get more productivity out of them.
yeah, but it's
They
also,
cannot
it's
leave-
allowing them to take the municipal vehicles home again in case they get called out.
Yes, and we've had guys that have had to come and exchange their company vehicle for a work vehicle because they have an appointment late in the day. I don't think that that's all fair. I think that it had been abused in the past, so if we put just some general guideline regulations, let department heads, the manager, I think it's kind of telling our employees that we trust them,
I got it.
believe in them, and it doesn't really cost us any money.
There's even a section in that ordinance that says that employees should first try to see if they can take a taxi or a bus.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, it's
Well, I'm not
crazy.
kidding.
It's
So
crazy.
It needs to be.
That's pretty funny.
reviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these vehicles just sit here, so,
Well, the only comment I would have on
So you're
that is-
saying they take them home?
yes. There's GPSs on them.
No, that's fine.
As long
Okay.
as there's GPSs on
I mean, there's fuel consumption.
It would be at the
whatever.
discretion of the manager, too, as to who would and wouldn't.
Yeah,
Okay, now this is going to take me to my next question. Might as well ask it now. Josie?
Yes.
isn't there something that is done as far as the distance used from your home to your work? And that is then given to the employee as it's their decision to make. That has to be claimed on your taxes or on your
No. I've never heard of that.
What? Oh,
You're
yeah.
saying our employees from travel time?
Our accountant.
Well,
No.
what are you talking, are you
The
They're
talking?
being reimbursed that you have to do that.
They
Miles
have
to and
to
from
then-
work is not reimbursable.
Not reimbursable, they are required to claim that portion.
With a municipal vehicle.
If they're
With
using,
municipal
yes.
vehicle,
Yes.
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 You
That's
guys are
correct.
totally misunderstanding what I'm
Yes.
saying. I had a company, we had an accountant that would say, okay, that vehicle, this many miles are now, has to be claimed by the employee because they used it to drive into the office. You can do that or you don't have to do that. It's just something I'm bringing up.
It's considered a benefit,
Yes,
and to actually get into the details of it.
it's very
might be-
tedious.
Yes.
And I would rather not, but I know companies that will charge a flat fee a month, some do nothing. So I just want you guys to all be aware. Because half the time you just look at me like I have two heads when I'm trying to tell you something I know.
Well, this is certainly for next month. We'll have time to
That's
talk
what
about it.
Men will do for you sometimes.
Mr.
Let's
Ross.
talk about it next month. I
Right.
agree
Yeah,
with
let's.
Mayor.
Mr. Ordinance will have something reviewed
Mr.
for us.
Mr. Ordinance with Ron and
Be
Company.
the highlight of my,
Very good. So if you report back to us, and then we'll talk about it at length, next month.
Ron
So,
and Company.
do you have any other comments,
Mrs.
Mr.
Cerrucci.
Rasher? Okay.
nothing.
Mr. Little, I know you took up one of your items, but if you want to,
Yeah, the one, Duquesne Light Safety and Compliance Inspections, I received a phone call from Dave Latari from Duquesne Light, and they are going to be going around Monroeville and other communities, and they're going to be conducting inspections. And I'll read his email to me, so everybody in the community understands what Duquesne Light is doing. In order to continue to deliver safe and reliable power, Duquesne Light is conducting inspections of its equipment in residential housing plans to ensure safety and compliance with required clearance standards. In instances where customers have planted vegetation or installed other materials that encroach on equipment or are in violation of clearance requirements, door hangers are being placed advising the customers that they need to remove any such encroachments within 30 days. We have this on our website. There is a website that you can click on, a link to Duquesne Light. If you would like to have any more information on it, go on to our website. So Duquesne Light representatives, technicians will be out, and if they happen to be clearing something that is encroaching on any of their equipment, you understand the reason why. And I also have another item that is not on my agenda. Last month, and I think maybe the month before that, I mentioned that PennDOT would be paving Route 22 from the Turnpike to Murraysville, the county line. Well, the documentation that I received, I assumed it was being done this year. Well, lo and behold, I find out from one of our staff members that it's being done in 2019. I contacted the representative at the District 11 office, and I told him, I said, there's nothing on the documentation that you gave to me that indicates that this is for 2019. And I looked at it, and he sent me additional documentation, but he really didn't answer my question. So, just to clarify that, or to change that, that will be done in 2019, not 2018.
Tim, can I say something about that, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Johns, go ahead, please.
Me personally, I'm glad that you just said that because I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
for you, most of you folks would probably care less. But the little guy here that lives clean on the other end of town, let me tell you what's going to happen when they do that. Northern Pike, I will never be able to get home unless I buy a helicopter. So I'm kind of glad they're putting it off till next year.
Well, they will probably be doing that in the evening.
That will be at
Oh,
night.
it doesn't matter
They will
what
do that
time of
at
the
night,
day
though.
it is. You ever try getting down Northern Pike?
But they will be out this,
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah.
they will be
Okay,
out
I'm
this
sorry, I
year,
didn't mean to
though.
interrupt you.
That's a good point.
Wait, Mr. Hugus is speaking.
Mr. Hugus, you had a comment? Go
They
ahead,
will be
please.
out this year redoing their storm sewers and culverts and some traffic signal upgrades. So they'll be ahead of this with doing some infrastructure repair and then following up next year with paving.
Now, will that work be done during the day? Or is that typical, or is that an evening?
It would depend.
Okay.
It does. I know that they're very sensitive about 22 and not having people work on it during business
Well, it's a safety issue for the
Absolutely.
workers.
Would they have to come to us to ask to be work done at night? Because I know that's normally when they do
Yes.
do it. Yes, okay. So then people would know.
Mr. Ordinance just made a good suggestion. Maybe,
This is in jest, obviously.
it wasn't just.
You've been branded for the
I
rest of
didn't
your
even
life.
hear
Bob.
it.
We
Said we
maybe
could make
that-
Northern Pike a toll road,
Make Northern Pike a
raise the
toll
money
road.
to
There you
pave
go.
all the other
We
roads.
could
There you
Get
go.
our money.
Mr.
Good
Johns will be out there
idea.
with a homemade stamp.
Mr. Johns, would you like to
collecting
be
money.
the toll collector?
I would.
Right, of course you would.
I'm sorry.
All right, folks, great. Mr. Little, anything else to report this evening?
No, I have nothing else.
Okay. We'll move over to staff. Mr. Sedlak, any comments,
Not right
concerns?
now.
Very good. Mr. Hugus?
I've said enough.
Meet you at lunch tomorrow.
Ms. Rock?
I
Very
don't have
good.
anything other than I got some work to do for Tuesday.
Very good. And you do it well.
You too.
Me too.
Mrs. Gatos?
Okay.
Report for this evening.
Yes. First of all, happy International Women's Day to everyone.
Yay.
Secondly, as everyone knows, the land bank, which has become a very great thing for, I think, all the communities to get rid of some of the blighted homes. One of the little stumbling blocks we come across was the Monroeville Municipal Authority has to also sign off on the property. And this past month, they agreed that they want to be part of the program. So no more stumbling blocks, and so that's a great thing, and it shows, our whole community, the school district, ourselves, and them, we're all playing in the same ballpark, which is fantastic news. I would like to say happy birthday to Greg Aricico for Monday, since we won't see him. I think he's turning...
The old mayor.
I'll be nice. The old
You
mayor.
stop that.
He said old mayor, M-A-R-E.
I know what
Not
he
mayor,
said.
mayor.
I know what he said.
Okay. We had touched a little bit on the employment opportunities for our young people for the summer. It's a great learning experience. We certainly have put it in the budget. I think there's an opportunity for around 20 to 25 young people to be hired. So we certainly encourage you to get your applications in. You have till Friday, April 13th, to send them up to the municipality. Camp counselors, swimming instructors, lifeguards, public works people, clerical. We will put you where we think, it's needed, and it works out great. Everybody gains from this. The whole community gains from such a program. The annual Jack Sedlak Memorial Cleanup Day will take place on Saturday, April 21st at 9 o'clock. That is another thing that's a great thing to get involved in as a member of the community. You can get a hold of the recreational department at 412-856-1008 to tell them that you would like to participate. Then last two things is there's going to be a Lyme Symposium March 23rd at 6 o'clock at the Senior Center. I think that the mayor's going to talk more about that. I'm only bringing it up because I've gotten some calls from residents in regard to the deers and ticks, and so there's some more education I think needs to be had by the public on that. So, and some new programs that they are actually introducing at the Senior Center this year is a Active Adventures group that's going to be a monthly thing, a Seniors Night Out, which is also going to be another monthly thing, a Burger Bash in May, a chili cook-off this fall, and updated hot dog roast, which Mr. Sedlak is, of course, our chef.
Either.
And they're going to have entertainment this year for that. So the Senior Center is always moving and grooving along, so, if you haven't taken advantage of it, please do, and that is it for me for this evening.
Hallelujah.
Very good.
Okay, let's go back to happy 75th birthday, our old mayor.
Well, we're close. 39.
Right.
Yeah. 75 again.
Mr. Poach?
Our library report was summarized quite well by Nicole earlier. We'll repeat some of that information. I think there's going to be a couple updates for Tuesday. I don't want Mr. Sedlak to feel like he doesn't have any homework assignments, so as well, to get off easily on this too, as opposed to Mr. Hugus and Ms. Rock. In the packets that I've been getting since we started here, I saw a lot of information concerning the open records requests to do that as well. It seems to me that this takes up a great deal of your day, or am I understating that?
Depending on what it is. It could take up my entire day.
Really?
Take up my entire week sometimes. Depending on what the request is, how many I have, whether we have to appeal it to the...
That was the next piece of that, too, because then it gets involved, and sometimes we have to involve the solicitor. That, if I'm interpreting that information correctly.
Yeah, anytime there's an appeal to the Open Records Office or downtown to the court system, Mr. Ratcher has to be involved at that point.
Is there any way we could work on capturing how much time we put into this? Because it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong on this too, when I look at the report, in some cases, we're requesting some of the same information a couple of times?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the request is not exactly the same.
Understood.
It could be requested.
Reword it and ask for the same thing.
Sure, understood,
Yeah,
okay.
So
we are
it may seem the same, but in actuality, it might be, I want something for this month, and then the next month they ask for it again for that month.
Sure.
So,
Okay, all right, so it just struck me as strange, you're putting an awful lot of time into this, I can only imagine, then, it can be quite substantial to it, too. And I think I checked with the solicitor, but those requests are public domain information, isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so who requests that information is a public domain piece of that, too? So you're tied up in all that. Is there a way we can work on, perhaps the next meeting or in the near future, to include that report and that information, and so to capture the amount of time we're putting into it? Because that's really the cost that we have coming
yeah,
through.
I mean, since I'm the one that does it, I can tell you exactly how long it takes me to do things.
Okay,
and,
let's
yeah,
see if we can
absolutely.
summarize that and who's making that request. But and I'll ask the rest of our folks on council, what's the best way for folks to understand that reporting? Should we just continue in that packet? Can we make it an agenda item?
I think you report on it, you and Joe report on it.
Okay, so we'll report on that on a regular basis, and I guess that becomes part of our agenda then.
Well, yeah, I'll make the suggestion, I mean, as far as, we could place it as one of the items in our agenda packets. That's why
Yeah.
it's part of the agenda.
Monthly.
And just how we do with, like, say, list of bills and tax collections and minutes, there may be questions about it, or maybe not, but it's still part of the packet. That way, it's part of the public record. We always have it. It's just part of the packet. And I believe that part of it's, well, I know that part of it's already printed up and it's in a spreadsheet. If we can just add that to the agenda from now on,
Yeah,
or the
I mean,
agenda packet. As
I
far
have
as
to have the open record log. I have to have the log which you receive every week.
Right.
So if that's all you want, I could.
maybe just on maybe.
Well, also maybe summarize the resources we're putting into it, because it seems as if, from looking at these, when it goes to appeal, it goes downtown, there's a little bit more than just you moving a piece of paper across here, too.
Yeah, because a lot of times if it's information requested from, say, the engineering department, I have to talk to 3 or 4 people over there. Information requested from council and the mayor, I contact you and get whatever you have, if anything.
And I don't mean minute by minute, but a rough summation of the time, hour or two, for something to that effect. Okay, that'd be great, too, because this, I mean, we're looking to include, we have someone part-time. It's enough work. It's come before us, at least since I've been here, that we have someone part-time's got to help with you, too. So it's starting to look like it's going to be quite a task, too. So if we can summarize that, report on it, possibly even post it at some point, whether we do the website, we'll move that process forward in the next couple months. So if we can got to give you homework, too, Joe. You can't be, we don't let you off the hook. So I appreciate the effort to it. Looks like it's an awful lot of time, too. But thank you for doing that. I think that's all for now, too. We'll report on a few more things probably on Tuesday.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Harvey.
Just to advise everybody, we had that public meeting at the Gateway Middle School, and I would like to thank all the residents for coming out and attending and letting their views known to both the school district and the council members that attended. I was pleased with the turnout, and I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. That's where you need to say what your opinion is on something like that. I also wanted to remark that of all the concerns that this council, along with the school board, has concerning the middle school property, it is my opinion, as I sit here, that I think the school board should be using a Monroeville-based realty company to handle the sale of the property, not somebody outside Monroeville. But that's my opinion. And last but not least, I just wanted to tell the residents that the Public Works Department has done an extremely good job on plowing and salting the roads, but with that comes a cost. This month's list of bills shows a $207,000 salt bill. just so you're aware. Keeping the roads clear just isn't that easy. There's a large cost with that, along with repairing them, and the salaries of paying the drivers, the fuel, the repair and maintenance of the trucks. So there's a lot of stuff with that, and I just wanted to put that out there for the public's knowledge. Other than that, I am done.
Thank you. Mr. Cinco.
I have a couple of things, more than a couple, as I promised everybody that since I now sit on the ALON Board of Directors and also the first Vice President of the Allegheny County Boroughs Association, I would start giving you reports on that. But before I do, Joe, can you kind of post up, we have a special election on March 13th coming up, and there's some wards and precincts that are Monroeville's part of. So the hours are the normal 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you read on what Joe's putting up there, for Ward 2, District 1, which is Crossroads Presbyterian Church, that's one area. Ward 2, District 3, that's North American Martyrs. Ward 3, District 2 is Church of the Resurrection. Ward 4, Districts 1 and 2, which is, you all know, Grace Baptist Church. And Ward 5, District 3, that's at the Cleveland Stewart Elementary School. So if you didn't get all that, it's certainly online. But again, the hours are the normal 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you, Joe.
Greg, one quick question on that too,
Sure.
as well. We went through it. I took a look at the website, link off our website. If people have a question on that, because there's a specific part where you can add your zip code and then your 4 additional parts of your zip code, and the 15146 plus your 4 digits too, and it takes you right to if you're affected or not. That actually works very well to do that. I had a couple of questions about that this
county
week.
website?
No, it's on our website.
Oh.
You can go to it and link to it if you have that question. It takes you to it. I'm pretty affected in the 2nd Ward because it's like smack in the middle between on either side. It doesn't affect. I was really surprised in some of the streets too, as well. So matter of feet in some cases too. So
Yeah, there's some challenges actually, because Eric and I live in the same ward.
Yeah.
And I was actually just talking to Mr. Little about this. There are 3 districts in the 2nd Ward. So 1 district votes at North American Martyrs, and 2 districts vote at Crossroads, normally, typically. However, for this special election, only one of those 2 districts are voting at Crossroads Church.
That's correct.
So you may have to do a little homework. If you typically vote at Crossroads, you may have to do a little homework to see if your actual street is involved with the special election. There's links through our website. There's
works
also
well.
that apparently works really well. PA Votes is another site where you can enter your street in the county. Obviously it's Allegheny, but it'll take you exactly to what the district is. And if you can kind of compile that with the information we have on TV and on the website,
Right.
then it'll let you know if you're affected or not.
Right.
So, thanks. Mr. Aracinko, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
No, good information, folks. But I'm going to do a shorter version this time, and I will give you more next Tuesday. But this is one I think everybody on council will be happy with. The PSAB seeks legislation to clarify that banks and lending institutions holding mortgages have a vested right to any property for which they hold a mortgage, and therefore can be held responsible for the maintenance and the condition of the property, and for any violations regarding the same property becomes the responsibility of the bank or lending institution. That is a huge endeavor that we're pushing from Allegheny County Boroughs Association, as well as Allegheny County League of Municipalities. And here's another one that we'll talk about, and I think everybody on council will be happy with as well. And I'll gladly give this to Tim. Tim, you have a copy of this. You can even post this on the website. Pennsylvania PSAB opposed any legislation that would strip municipalities of their legal authority to regulate wireless facilities both within and outside of the public right-of-way, limit a municipality's ability to negotiate and collect reasonable fees for coalition on municipal infrastructure, mandate, or municipal cooperation. As outlined above, we believe it is critical for municipalities to have the local authority to determine the placement, construction, and modification of wireless facilities. And I'm sure nobody on this council or in the audience would disagree on that. And another big one coming up is, and then I'll do more on Tuesday, that this is PSAB opposes HR. It's actually House Resolution 291, associated efforts to eliminate the local income tax collection districts authorized under Act 32 of 2008 and replace with a statewide collection mechanism. This basically, and as everybody may not know, I'm the chairman for our Southeast Tax Collection District. Let me just give you the benefits of how it's been working. We get weekly distributions of our revenue, your revenue, to the municipality. Customized reports for local budget projections and community impact analysis. Employer compliance enforcement. Individual taxpayer auditing. Local TCC control, which means we control that. Designated assistance to employers, payrolls, companies, and tax preparers. Plus, we only pay out of the, I'm going to give you raw numbers, about $65 million, which our district collects. We only pay 1.5%. Now, can you imagine what the state's going to do? They have to pay all the employees. They have to do all this backward paperwork. We would never see it, in my opinion, weekly distributions that we've been getting. Our money's been rolling, Tim, am I not correct?
The whole Act 32 has increased everybody's tax collection. It is more efficient across the Commonwealth. So everybody has benefited from, that Act 32.
So the bottom line is, folks, please let your representatives know, hell no to House Resolution 291. What we have is working perfect. Perfect. And that's all I'll say for tonight, but I will give you more information. It's a huge endeavor we're taking on, but it's well worth it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
I have two issues I'd
Mr.
like
Wilson.
to address. Happy birthday, Mayor,
Thank you.
and congratulations to our girls' basketball
Happy
team,
Mayor.
Gateway basketball team.
Absolutely.
Honest and...
I'm a man of few words.
When did that start?
Thank you, very good. And I'll wrap up here with a few items. Once again, congratulations to the Whippeal Class 5A girls basketball team for their championship win for Whippeal, their title, and also our Gateway sophomore, Olivia Livingston, her Whippeal record in the 50-yard freestyle and the 100-yard freestyle, winning both events. So congratulations to all those young ladies. The cleanup day we mentioned, once again, Saturday, April 21st, 9 to 11 a.m. You can register through the Recreation Department. The Lyme Symposium that Mrs. Gatos mentioned at the Senior Center, it's a viewing of a documentary, Under Our Skin. It's the hidden story of Lyme disease. Thank you, Joe. It is on Friday, March 23rd at 2018, so in a couple weeks at 6 p.m. There is also going to be followed by a panel discussion with two Lyme-literate physicians, Dr. Joseph and Dr. Dear Iramo. And that is a free event. There is no registration required. It's presented by the PA Lyme and Pittsburgh Lyme Disease Support Group. So come out and learn about this terrible disease, and that is a preventable disease, which we'll be talking about more in the coming months as far as how Lyme disease is transmitted, which is through the bite of a tick. I'll be trying to educate the public a little bit more on that, because this is the time of year when the ticks unfortunately start to come out. Couple news items in Monroeville. Forbes Hospital, Allegheny Health Network, they are doing their construction work on their $35 million cancer center. The construction is occurring there by the main sign by Gateway Campus Drive. So they are moving. They're hoping to have that open next year. And it's a great benefit, great asset for this community. And we're very happy to see Forbes growing in our neighborhood. And we had a meeting today It's Senator Brewster's office with a number of people from the state, from the DEP, from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board regarding the fine wine and good spirits store across the street from here that was the victim of the mine subsidence, the collapse around Christmas time. Some good news, the store will be reopening. So right now the store is stable. The DEP, they have remediated everything they had to do, they did underneath. The building is safe, it is fully stable, it is probably in better condition than what it originally was. However, there are certainly some cosmetic items that they need to tend to on the facade and inside a little bit. They're hoping to be open in the next like 60 days or 90 days. However, they are opening up a temporary store in the interim in the Johnette Plaza. And that's going to be open March 21st, I believe, in a couple of weeks. So they're opening up a temporary store until all those cosmetic changes are made at the liquor control, or the fine wine and good spirits store across the street from us. But they intend to go back into that building. And it certainly was it's been a tough battle for them. A lot of things happening there, but it's going to be happening here very shortly. And then lastly, the zoning issue at the school district. As Mr. Harvey mentioned, we had our a public intergovernmental committee meeting last week. Prior to that, we had a regular intergovernmental meeting, and we're going to continue to have those discussions. These are certainly big. This is a big item, not just for the school district and not just for the municipality. It affects the entire community, and a lot more discussion needs to be done on that. Whenever you are an elected official, I mean, certainly decisions you make, there's a lot of things that go into those decisions, a lot of moving parts, and it's difficult to make those decisions. I know that there are some that question decisions of council, and maybe that's not the best tactic to take, particularly whenever it doesn't pertain to an item where we are jointly looking at. And in this one, yes, we are jointly looking at, and we want to do the best thing for the community. I will say that I've had great discussions with Dr. Kalkstein, a board member who is the chair of the Intergovernmental Committee meeting, and him and I are both very committed to bridging the gap between the school district and this dais here, council, and the mayor's position, and we're both very committed to that, and we're going to keep an open dialogue. So they have requested a table for this month, and we'll be talking more about it over the next several months, so the public is well aware of the status of this entire project. So with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.